I will call us to order. I will call us to order and ask everybody to please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, board members, you have in front of you the approval of the agenda. I did want to note for the record that Commissioner Rowland will have an excused absence. He is unavailable tonight. You have the draft agenda in front of you, and Chief, if I recall correctly, we have nothing, there's nothing else for the agenda.
Nothing else.
Is there anything else for the agenda? If not, I will. Commissioner Chan's phone.
Throw it out the window.
That's one way to solve it. Okay, so approval of the agenda. I'll move the adoption of the agenda as presented. Is there a second? Second by Commissioner Teofilak. Moved and seconded to adopt the agenda as presented. Is there any discussion on the motion? If not, we'll move to a vote. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Passes unanimously. That moves us forward to the consent agenda, which is item number 4, and that includes the September 2025 payroll summary and authorization in 4A, and in 4B, it's the October 7, 2025 claims vouchers totaling $1,035,136.83. I'll move the adoption of the consent agenda items. Is there a second? Seconded by Commissioner Fernhoff. It's been moved and seconded to adopt the consent agenda items. Is there any discussion on the motion? If not, we'll move to a vote. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Passes unanimously. That moves us forward in the agenda to the approval of the meeting minutes in 5A, and that is the September 9, 2025 work session and the September 16, 2025 regular meeting. I'll move the adoption of those sets of meeting minutes. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Commissioner Chan. It's been moved and seconded to adopt those meeting minutes. Is there any discussion on the motion? Any discussion on the motion? If not, we'll move to a vote. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Passes unanimously. That moves us forward in the agenda to item number 6, which is public comment. Is there any request for public comment? We'll start first in the room and then go to our Zoom platform. Any request for public comment in the room? Not seeing any requests for public comment in the room. I'll go to our Zoom platform with Ms. Blankenship. Ms. Blankenship, any requests for public comment on our Zoom platform?
There is none.
Very good. Thank you. I'll come back lastly to the room again. Any requests for public comment in the room? One last time. Not seeing any requests. Thank you. We will move forward then in the agenda to item number 7, which is the Fire Chief's report. Good evening, Chief Eastman.
Good evening, Chair Kenny, Vice Chair Lawrence, the rest of the board, liaison, staff, and folks online. Real brief. Chief's report tonight. We had 2 events. At the end, one was the 20th of September, which was the Emergency Preparedness Expo. We had over 300 people that were at that event. And I think it gets stronger and stronger each year. And then we had, for Fire Prevention Week, we had an open house at Station 21 on the 4th of October. I know there were commissioners at both events. I just don't know who was where. But again, at the open house on the 4th, we had over 300 people actually visiting our open houses. So again, a testament to the great work that our community outreach folks do and our volunteer support groups do. The impact just gets more and more and more. A testament to the work that those folks do on behalf of the RFA. So, and again, just to thank the commissioners that attended. I was not able to attend into one of those this time. But for the commissioners that go, I will tell you it's appreciated by not just the staff, but the public that sees you. It's appreciated when you're there and attend. So for those that attended, I appreciate it. Thank you. And the other thing I just want the board to know is we're starting a CERT class in Montlake Terrace on Friday morning. 50 folks starts Friday morning. They'll graduate on Sunday. So I don't have anything else for tonight, and I'll pause for any questions from the board.
Any questions for Chief Eastman? Commissioner Fernhoff, then Commissioner Chan. Commissioner Fernhoff.
Chief, thank you for the report. Where will the training be held here?
It's, the classroom's going to be at Malt Lake Terrace,
Okay.
at PD. And I'm not sure where they're doing the practical. I don't know that, but I know they're going to be down at Malt Lake Terrace PD. That's where we're going to start and do the classroom work on Friday morning.
Thank you, sir.
Commissioner Chan.
Yeah, I'm really happy. You know, I'm always for the open house because that's the only connection we have. And I think we should do more of that. And I was disappointed. I didn't get a cape. So I don't know.
Turn off your phone.
I
Keeps
don't know.
ringing.
Sorry that, I did, I don't know, you may want to talk about later on. I saw a whole surplus, ambulance in there. So what is that? I saw a lot of ambulance lying behind the station.
Behind
there.
Station 21.
Yeah,
So I'm going to have to ask James or the shop or somebody, because I know we're challenged with real estate to store rigs. We do most of them that are in ready reserve are inside, and some of them, because Station 22 has more space, are ready reserves outside. I don't know if, I believe it's a reserve rig. Chief Maxwell was saying the rig you're referring to is a reserve backup rig for us.
so it's not excess or anything.
Mm-mm. Nope.
Okay, somehow I got the wrong information. It's just kind of strange of a, whole thing lying up in there. So we
Yeah.
do not have a surplus of ambulance.
Right now, no, I think what ends up happening is when, again, it'll depend on whether we're getting them remounted or we're buying new. And again,
Okay.
when James comes and talks to the board about what we're doing with rigs, some of them will be remounted. And then we get to a place where some of them can't be remounted anymore and we buy new. Typically, when we're surplusing the chassis the majority of the time, because we
Right.
remount all the rigs at least once.
Right.
And then with the rigs that have met end of life, including the chassis and the box, then there's a process we have to go through. They take radios and stuff off. And it is a process that they have to go through before we get them ready to surplus and send them. And usually we send them to Murphy's auction. Or sometimes we sell them to other agencies. There's all sorts of ways that those units get surplus, but but like Sean was saying, I don't think the
Yeah.
rigs there now are in a surplus status at this time.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for Chief Eastman on the chief's report? Great. Thank you, Chief. That moves us forward then to item number 8, which is our legal reports. And we have our attorney, Rich Davis, with us on Zoom. Good evening, Mr. Davis.
Good evening, commissioners and liaisons. Just a brief report. I wanted to mention sort of an interesting case from Okanagan County. You start with the proposition that when an attorney provides a communication to a client, the communication is privileged, covered by the attorney-client privilege. And the case law basically says that if any portion of that is disclosed, then there's an argument that the entire communication is waived, that the privilege is waived as to the entire communication. So we had an interesting case in Okanagan County where there was a communication from the attorney to the county, and there was an argument about whether the communication itself was privileged, but the court found that it was. What happened is that the county tried to comply with the Public Records Act by taking out the part that was not privileged and heavily redacting that document so that the real privileged portion of the communication was blanked out, redacted. And the part that wasn't privileged, that was sort of harmless, was produced to the public records requester. So the requester took that and said, well, you've disclosed part of this and thus you've waived the privilege to the entire document. Even though that may be the case with regards to ordinary civil cases, when it comes to Public Records Act, the court found that no, that is not the holding that should obtain here, because the purpose of the Public Records Act is to withhold only those communications or the portions of a record that are privileged. So there's kind of a policy for you to redact out documents that are privileged and let the requester see the balance of the document. So fortunately, the court held that the county did not waive the privilege simply by providing the non-privileged portions of the record, which is really the result that should take place. Apart from that, I don't have any other report, but if there's any questions about that case or anything else, let me know.
Any questions for Mr. Davis from the board members? Any questions? All right, thank you, Mr.
All right,
Davis.
thank you.
Great. That moves us forward in the agenda to item number 9, which is the union report, and we have Connor Holtum, political director from Local 1828 on Zoom with us tonight. Good evening.
Good evening, commissioners, chiefs, staff, and guests. Thank you for having me tonight. Some exciting news. Local 1828 has approved looking into some expenditure for funding scholarships for EMT students. We'll be working with the community outreach department on what exactly that looks like. But this is a great recruitment tool for helping students, who want kind of a quicker path into the fire service and may need some help getting there. So that's kind of the latest good news from Local 1828. And that's all I have for you tonight. Thank you, everyone, for your hard work.
Great, thank you. Any questions? Great, thank you. That moves us forward on the agenda then to item number 10, which is unfinished business. And we start with the overview of bond options for the capital facilities plan. This will be with Jim Nelson from DA Davidson and Chief Eastman. Good evening.
Good evening. I guess I'll start just a little bit of an introduction. Most of you know Jim Nelson from DA Davidson. He's presented to the board before. And I kind of want to give just a little bit of a background of kind of how we're looking to do this. You got the general overview of what the RFA can do with debt, whether it's voted debt, non-voted debt, the differences between an RFA and a fire district, and kind of an update of what it is and how much we can borrow and the differences between our foreign districts. We've been working with Brian Harris from TCA, and you'll get a brief from them next week, which they went and updated the facility plan. Some of it was work that we did to make it current time. If you remember, some of the square footages that we identified in that document was back in 2016. A lot has happened, pandemic being one of them, making sure we had enough warehouse space for meet the future needs of the RFA. Made sure that the square footage for those buildings were accurate, the square footage for apparatus maintenance if we go there. We had the annexation with Mill Creek, so it now includes Station 76. If you recall, in that conversation, it's a tear down rebuild. And as a result of Mill Creek coming in, it potentially takes the Cascadian Way infill fire station and moves it up on the priority list. Some of that depending on what Mill Creek does with potential annexations in the future and what does that mean, and for us to plan differently. So we made some adjustments to the capital facilities plan that you'll get briefed on next week with Brian. But what we did is we took those updated numbers and we did 2 scenarios and asked Mr. Nelson to actually now look at 2 different options for us and dollar amounts and show you what does that mean as we move forward in the options that we have. And then I'm sure there's questions from the last time he gave you a brief that linger and kind of get those questions answered tonight. And then Brian Harris will be back next week. And then we'll work on where we need to go for the remainder of the conversation. I think the capital facilities plan, and Commissioner Kenny and Commissioner Lawrence, correct me if I'm wrong, is we'd like to be in a place with where we're going to go with the facilities plan, to be in a place in December for the board to have true discussion about, are they want to look at funding options for 26 or not? That's the goal of staff. It's the goal of the committee. And you're seeing the presentation night from Mr. Nelson's one piece presentation from Brian Harris next week. And then these two presentations will figure out what we're going to do for the rest to tee up the discussion with that the board can have in December about where are we going to go and what are we going to do for our future capital needs. So without further ado, I'm going to now turn it over to Jim and have him present what he brought forward tonight. So thanks.
Can the mic, closer to the mic?
Oh, there we go. Thank you, Chief. Commissioners, honored to be here this evening, and let me know if you have any questions. So this is an update from the last meeting. If we turn to slide 1, this would be, if you decide to move forward, it would be a voter-approved bond, a special excess levy. It's not counted against your regular levy limit. To receive voter approval, you need at least 60% or greater, plus you have to validate based on the previous year's November election, you need to have at least 40% turnout. And so those are the two big hurdles to go over. Related to that, we typically say start that voter education process a good 9 to 12 months if you can before the ballot date, really to get your messaging out there in the voter education. If we turn to the next slide, you can see your debt capacity. It's interesting, this is the new preliminary 2026 assessed value figure, including the city of Edmonds. And so when we calculate 3/4 of your assessed valuation, 3/4 of 1%, that gives you a non-voted debt capacity of 625.7 million, but that's non-voted debt capacity. So if you took on non-voted debt, those payments would have to come out of your current expense fund. So it's sort of like credit card capacity. Just because you have it doesn't necessarily mean you can afford it. And so then we really focus in on the voted debt capacity, 1.5% of your assessed valuation, and that is 1,251 million. If you took on a voted bond, say for approximately 400 million, 405 million, you'd still be left with a total remaining debt capacity of 846.5 million. So any
Can I just
questions so
stop you over
far?
here?
Pardon
Can-
me?
Can I ask a question now or you want
Yes.
to wait until?
Yep.
Okay, so actually our capacity will continue to grow, right? Because our AV will be going up. and
That's
everything else
correct.
is there. So it seems to me we still have a lot of capacity for bonds. So my question is that, do you want to leave it for a while or? I mean, when we're, okay. So we can start, we, after this, we can immediately start another bond, raising bond again, right?
Right.
You don't, there's no period needed to stop or anything. I'm just looking at the calendar wise, the flexibility.
Right. Well, let's jump to slide 7. As usual, David, you're always a step ahead of me. So when you issue tax exempt bonds, you must have a reasonable expectation that you can spend the bond money in a 36-month period. So usually for amounts like this, whether it's a fire district, regional fire authority, school districts, and others, you go to the voters one time and then you issue those bonds in a series
Right.
based on the architect and construction manager on what you think you can spend in a 36-month period. And so it's interesting when you look at slide 7 and see the numbers. If you were to look at a $350 million bond and you could spend it all in a 36-month period, and again, you're only going to the voters one time, the estimated levy rate's 23.6 cents per thousand. And the monthly increase on a $750,000 home is about $14.72 per month. It's interesting. I went back and looked at I've got a lot of notes here. I went back and looked at your last issue in 2002, and when you went to the voters for 19.3 million, the estimated levy rate at that time was 37 cents.
I know.
So you'll come in less than that because of the growth of your assessed valuation. So that's just something to keep in mind. So then the beauty of issuing the bonds in series, like 3 series, and we just assume 3 equal amounts. And maybe you would issue the bonds, the voters approve, assuming the voters approve it in 2026, maybe right out of the gate, you issue one amount, December 29th, 2026, another amount in 2032, another amount in 2035. The idea is growth paying for growth. So each time a series comes on, it's being issued at a higher assessed value base. And so with the 3 series, you can see that your levy rate drops from 23.6 cents down to approximately 17 cents. So as a bond underwriter, we get excited on those numbers. The lower the levy rate, usually that increases the chances then that the voters are going to support it. If you did it in 4 series, you'd be down to about 14.5 cents. And that's for a 20-year financing. Because you're a regional fire authority, you can issue the bonds up to 25 years. So then we wanted to see what that looks like. So if we go to slide 8, now we're looking at 350 million, 25 years. And you can see that for 1 series, you're at about 20 cents. 3 series, you're at 15 cents. And 4 series, you're at about 13 cents. So those levy rates come down a little bit going from a 20-year to a 25-year financing.
Yes, yeah, I think I like also too is the annual increase only less than $100, 98.7.
Right. Yep.
And then the monthly fee is less than $10, right? It down 23 cents. For 25 years, people, from a taxpayer point of view, they don't make a huge difference, 20 years versus 25 years.
Right.
Yet the number wise, for marketing wise, I think is a much better way to.
Yeah, and that's what we find that the voters, the taxpayers really focus in on is what's the levy rate, what's the monthly cost to an average home value in the district. And so we used 750,000. If you're in a home that's valued, say, at 1.5 million, then it's just going to be twice that amount. So if it's a $1.5 million home, 4 series, then instead of being $808.23 a month, it's going to be about $16.46 a month. But still, that's very, very low levy rates, and part of that has to do.
2 cup of Starbucks.
Yeah, there you go.
Mr. Nelson, can I ask you a question about just a little more definition around the series?
Sure.
So on this screen here where you indicate 1 series, that means $350 million issued just once, one bond, 350 million. Okay, but 3 series, does that mean 350 million is divided in 3 and issued
Over that time frame.
over that time frame
So in a
for a
sense.
total of 350 million, not 350 million per.
Oh, correct.
offer.
Yeah.
350 million total divided by 3 essentially.
Yeah. And
then
you're,
in this assumption, how many years apart is that for those? 3?
about 2 years.
2 years apart.
And then each series, you have 36 months to spend that money.
Okay.
And that's the key. That's an IRS rule that you're supposed to have a reasonable expectation that you can spend the money in a 36-month period. And the IRS realizes that sometimes municipalities can be delayed due to permitting, Department of Ecology, wetlands issues. But that's one issue. The other one has to do with arbitrage, is that they don't want you to basically jump out there with a large bond issue, invest the money, and make interest earnings more than the borrowing rate. And so that's why they have that rule.
What about where it's 4 series? Does that mean the 350 million is divided into 4 separate, but again, 350 million divided by 4?
Correct.
And
Yeah,
then the idea being each 2 years apart.
correct.
Okay.
Yeah, and the beauty of it is it's the idea of growth paying for growth, So, if we're saying 4 series, 350 million, again, that's net, that's what you're going to receive in the construction fund, with those 4 series. And just for simple math, we just divided them equally. But anyway, yeah,
But would
that's
you
the way-
have to divide them equally, or can you choose? Like, you can do your first one, you figure we've got 2 or 3 projects ready to go. Of our 350 million, we're ready for 150 million right up front.
Right. Yep, you can adjust
And
that.
then the others at 100 million, let's say a 3 series,
Right,
100 million on the next 2.
right.
Okay,
Right.
just depending on what you want to do.
Yeah, and if we're estimating, say, a combined 13.2 cents based, and again, it's an estimate based on current interest rates and the current assessed valuation, then essentially it's taking 13.2 cents and dividing it by 4. And so 1/4 of that is going to be issued, say, the first 2 years. So just to do rough math, 3.5 cents might be the first year. 2 years later, now you've got the other 3.5 cents that's layered on there. Now you're at 7 cents or so, and then 10 cents, and then another, 3 cents after that. So then when you think about a 20 or 25-year financing, the first series is for 20 or 25 years. And then the next series is also for 20 or 25 years, but it was issued 2 years later than the first series. So again, it comes back to that concept of growth paying for growth and then easing the taxpayers into it also.
And after you do you have to commit up front that it's a 3 series or a 4 series, or can you kind of see how it goes as you
Yeah,
go?
you can adjust. It could be that all of a sudden your construction bids come in lower than expected and you don't issue the full amount. You come into some grant monies. So that's the other benefit of doing it in multiple series.
The challenge I see with the series is that your 3, and tell me if I'm wrong, the 350 million is capped. That's what you're getting. So $350 million in year 1 is worth more than $350 million in year 25. And so you have to be sure you're building in enough inflation into your $350 million to cover all of your projects over, if it's 25 years, there's a whole lot of inflation during that period of time.
Right, but that 350 million
Yeah.
really is going to be over a period of roughly the first 6 years or so. Because again, just for demonstration purposes, you do 1 series end of 2026, another series end of 2032. Looking a lot of notes here. So 29 and 26, 29, 32, and 35. So that's really what you're talking about, is maybe an 8-year period.
Okay,
So 25 years of life of the bond.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I've just been trying to wrap my mind around having a construction program that's going to last over close to a decade, and having enough funds, flexible funds, to come in to
yeah,
fund that, and not either have too many funds initially, or run out of funds during the
Right.
construction project.
yeah. It's a pretty
Um,
common practice that municipalities issue it in series to meet that IRS 36-month spend down period. But then it comes back to the architects and the construction managers on what are their estimates, and what are the contingencies? And so that kind of goes back to your early statement. So like, as an example, East Pierce Fire and Rescue, the voters approved 80 million in 2016, required voter approval. They got 60.05%. So they barely made it over the hurdle, but they got it. So they immediately got $40 million. And then 3 years later, they issued the balance, which was another 40 million. In the meantime, their interest rates dropped, their construction costs came in lower than expected, so they're able to afford other projects. And because of their assessed valuation growth, even in their fire district, even though they had said 20 years or less, they had a choice on the second series to issue it in 20 years. They ended up doing it in, I think it was 16 or 17. It was 17 years. So that now both series are maturing at the same time. And they came in lower than what they had communicated to the voters. So that's kind of where we're coming from too, is to do a conservative estimate and then ideally come in lower than what was communicated to the voters.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, and again, some of that'll come back to the architect and the construction manager on how they do the estimate and the contingencies they put in there. Yeah. All right, I'll keep going out of order. Slide 9 shows 405 million. And Commissioner Chan hinted to me before the meeting that he said, can we come in lower than that? And I said, sure, maybe you want to go 398 million or whatever that might be. But now we see 20 years, one series is at 27.2 cents, 3 series is 19.5 cents, 4 series is 16.8 cents. And then you can see the respective monthly costs to a $750,000 home.
If you don't mind, I ask you, okay, in general, I know school had the biggest, much bigger amount, right? I remember the Edmonds, the $600 million fail. Okay, so my question to you, number one, how do we compare in general, fire district wise? I assume that ours is the largest one so far?
Yes, it is.
Okay, then my following question is that going to be, as an investor, would you hesitate a little bit? Wait a minute, this is only 5 districts, $400 million versus, school and all other $80 million, $60 million. Is there some kind of risk in there because of the dollar amount versus the nature of the fire district?
Yeah, are you asking that for the large?
risk, yeah.
Yeah, that the
for
voters might
investor.
turn it down, or there might be no, and I think you could explain that by the size of your district and all the annexations and mergers, and then to focus in on the levy rate. It's not an exact science, but ideally we like to see the levy rate at 25 cents or less, which you're achieving for the most part. And so, when we see a fire district or regional fire authority going out to the voters, say for, over 50 cents, over 75 cents per thousand, then we sort of cringe a little bit because.
So far, which fire district has the highest amount that big?
The highest voted bond levy.
Yeah,
It would be I don't know that for sure, but I know it would be, just by math, it would be a smaller district that is gonna, go out for a voted bond. And when you divide
Right.
those payments over a lower assessed valuation base, then it's gonna be a higher levy rate.
so
This-
you don't know which.
This will be significantly higher than any other fire districts put a bond measure
Right, that's
for
what I'm
capital
thinking.
on the ballot, right? If you look at just, over the last 15 years and you look at, we were a fairly large fire district. We were 6 stations back in that day. And now, we're in the top 5, 6 organizations in the state. You look at us, Central Pierce, Puget Sound, they're all about the same, but we're in a different place where when you're talking the size, the number of stations, NRAV, we would probably be the largest from a fire department's perspective outside potentially the city of Seattle. Maybe Tacoma and Spokane, because I don't track that. But this would be one of the larger capital voted initiatives from a fire district in the state, I believe. I don't know if there's been one more than what we're talking about between the 350 and
You didn't even
400.
know what dollar amount? the
I think it was
highest amount?
130 million was the
130.
highest one that I'm aware of.
But I would say that's true just because we're large.
Yeah,
But I don't
exactly.
know that we should be scared off by that, because I would analogize us more to a school district. And school districts around us have gone 300 million plus.
Mhm.
Yep.
And population wise, I think that's a better analogy to look at locally, although, folks will point out that, well, this is the largest one in the state. Okay, but it's really based on our size, better comparison to a school district, which is much more similar to what we're talking about.
And here's the advantage we have to school districts is the Edmond School District, $600 million bond that they put forward was for one high school and a remodel of another school. And we're talking in the current plan, we're at 16 facilities and land. I mean, it's a very different conversation when we get to talk to the public about what we're doing, right?
But Chief, it doesn't benefit kids directly like a school does.
100%. There's the negative side, but when you look at the dollar amount and and I guess in our scenario, what we're talking about is it's very diffusely spread across the whole RFA. It's not one section of the RFA. It really does. If we do this and once it's completed, it will have a positive impact on every part of the RFA, which is a benefit, I think, as the conversation we have and how we move forward.
But I think I like this, we have the capacity is huge. We still, after the 800, after we have a huge capacity in there, I think that's, because then after all this $300 million, we can start immediate again, right? Another $100, whatever, a couple $100,000 or 300, later on.
Oh, for another voted bond in the future?
Yeah,
Yeah, that's up to chief and staff and the architects and,
well,
for that decision. But well, I'll ask the chief, how long for this, say 350 million, 400 million, how many years will that satisfy your needs?
Well, so
Capital
I
needs.
think with what we've changed, we're looking at, in the work we've done, unless something unique happens where we bring on other agencies and do some other things, this is a pretty good solid 25-year need for the organization. So it really does impact us long-term. Now, the caveat to that is the flip, and again, we're a little bit segueing off the topic of conversation, is once we get the capital stuff done, we need to figure out a reserve component to maintain the facilities, because there's a cost with that too, that I know CFO Bothwell will be working on and James will be working on. But I think this gets us, from what we projected based on the work we've already done, 20 years in the future pretty easily.
But Chief, one of the things that I like about it is, and particularly the serial nature of it is, you don't have to figure it out all in year one. You're, in my estimation, you're building this over probably a 10-year period of time. You're going to ease into that capacity to do what you're talking about. You don't have to figure it out in year one. And you'll also have the natural growth over 10 years. So it will make it easy to acclimatize to that.
Yeah, and the other piece is when we talk about new fire stations, there's a component of getting staffing to be able to put in it. And so when you talk about the serial issuance, there is logistical pieces like you're talking about. This is a big project and it's got lots of sub projects within it. And having the flexibility to share serial issuance for us as part of the planning is really valuable. And the flexibility, we've got property we're doing, we're finishing up the third phase of ecology. We've got property that we purchased at Alderwood Mall Parkway that we need to coordinate with the widening of the road. And I mean, there's other logistical places, things that are going to impact where we go, and having the ability to do serial does allow us flexibility. And again, environments change, things change. I mean, I think it adds flexibility for us, and some of it's good, like you said, comes in less and less expensive for construction, less expensive to borrow the money. The flip side of that's also true. Economy becomes uncertain, and sometimes interest rates are higher and construction costs are more. So I think to add to that, when Brian talks next week, we'll talk about contingencies, because we talked about this a lot. And I've made a commitment when we started this back in 2016. If we identify what we want, the goal is to make sure we can complete the project, again, with reasonable contingency, reasonable inflationary cost. So, Commissioner Kennedy, like you bring up, if at the 12-year mark, when we borrow the last bit of money, or 50, whenever that is, that we've accounted for the cost, understanding we're going to build this over time, and we've done the work. And we'll have a little bit more detailed conversation next week about 4% contingency versus 5% contingency based on what you guys have already brought up with Mr. Nelson. but I think we're in a place where we're doing this such that if the board chooses to move forward, with reasonable things happening in the world, we should be able to complete what we've asked to complete with the dollars that we're looking at. There's always going to be things that are outside anybody's control, and that stuff happens, and we'll have to adjust to it. But we've been very deliberate in making sure that we fund and tell you the dollar amount needed to complete the project in the timeline we gave you, that we'll talk about next week, so we don't shortchange it and we don't say, well, what project are we not going to do? Our goal is to make sure we can complete what we told the voters we wanted to complete. We can complete it.
Slide 6. Our estimate is that for an underlying rating for the district, we feel that you would achieve AA plus, possibly a AAA. And part of that is we just finished a financing for Snohomish Fire 4, and they're issuing their bonds in 3 series. The 3rd series, they think that they probably will not need to issue as much. They happen to choose to do non-voted bonds. But that was a nice surprise for them and us to get that AA plus rating. So again, it comes back, as you know, to the strength of your economy. You have virtually no debt right now. The strength of your financials, you have GEMT revenues, transport fees based on comparables. So that's really good for the district and the taxpayers, and that helps to achieve a lower interest rate. And I think Chris Bothwell has already done a 10-year financial forecast, and so that's another key factor. You have great financial management, great policies, and so it's having an independent national rating agency like Standard & Poor's come in and just affirm how well you manage your resources. Yes, any questions on slide 6?
Commissioner Teoflag.
Do we have to pay the rating agencies to do their analysis?
You do. Yeah, there's a rating agency fee, and all the costs are rolled into it. So whatever amount you decide to go to the voters, let's say it's 400 million, you'll get 400 million in the construction fund. And this probably relates to your business, Chris, but right now what we've seen in the marketplace for a number of years is there's a premium from investors that buy the bonds, like banks, insurance companies, and others. They're willing to pay, let's say it's 100,000 they're buying, but add a lot more zeros to that. But if they're buying 100,000, they actually might be paying, depending on market conditions, 105 or 106,000. And so at the end of the day, you wouldn't have to issue bonds, say, for 400 million to get 400 million. You'd be issuing a lesser amount. But it's dependent on market conditions. So we don't want to go with that estimate because that could be shorting the district.
How much is the fee for like S&P to give a rating?
I think for a size like this, it might be roughly $50,000 or so. We did an estimate of all the financing costs involved when you think about myself as a bond underwriter, the bond attorney, Standard & Poor's rating fee. It'll be less than 0.5% of the total principal amount that's issued. That just kind of gives you an idea. So.
And then another question regarding the interest earned. So let's say you get $100 million in that first series. You spend it all within 36 months. So just say, for example, you write a check at the last day for $100 million. The interest that's earned, do we get to keep?
Yeah, that
Cool.
goes back into the project fund and it's used for the purpose described in the ballot resolution.
Gotcha.
And the ballot title. So yeah, that's great when you think about it, because yeah, interest rates are higher right now, but so are investment rates.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Cool. Thank you.
Go ahead.
Okay, I'll pick it up here. We turn to slide 11. Just gives you an overview on the election process, but on the players involved when you think about assuming voter approval and you issue your series of bonds, the money, the voted bond proceeds are wired to the county treasurer, and then from there you make requests from them. And then the county treasurer collects that special excess levy on your behalf. So it doesn't go into the district funds. Investors like that. And because you can't commingle the money, but it's a special excess voter approved levy that can only be used to pay the principal and interest on the bonds. And I think, like a question might be, okay, do you go for the August 2026 election date or the November 2026 election date? And that really comes back to all of you, but I think it really is trying to allow a good, 9 months for voter education. So I think it'll come back to, if you have a ready decision to go, say, this December, then maybe you choose to move forward and, go with an August ballot. But I think you also want to look at it is, are you competing against any other issues? Historically, the school districts have always gone in February, but now they're starting to break that trend and look at November. So there's just various schools of thought on that.
So actually follow up that question in general, because school usually have a lot of parents want to have going on, right? So the majority of them, they will show up, but the non-parent, the people who don't have kids, kind of ignore it. So that's the advantage they're using, right? In February.
Right, and schools
So-
in session.
Right. So what would you think for fire district? What do you think is the best one? Which way to go in? Because sometimes if you have more general, that all the people will look at that, right?
Right,
There's a lot of con people, oh, I don't want to pay a penny more.
that come out in
They come out
November.
and say, no, go against it, right?
Right, yeah. So the short answer is come to the Fire Commissioners Conference, the session that I'm doing with Liz Loomis on, let's see, that's going to be on Friday, and ask her directly. But it just varies. I'll tell you a funny story. Years ago, I was speaking with a bond attorney, and he said this, not me, but he said, if you're an Eastern Washington Fire District, you go in August because there's smoke in the air. And yeah, he had a point though, is that take advantage of the awareness. So I think it just depends on the circumstances, and, you all know your voters the best. And I think that just kind of is something that's a bridge you'll still have to cross as far as if it's August or November. But I always kind of use the default answer is that, if you need a few more months to educate your community, then consider November versus rushing it, for August. So I just find that the more lead time you have to educate and build consensus, the better.
So in general, most of the fire district, which,
It varies. It just depends. But I would, for the most part, they go in August or November. So related to that, last slide, is you look at the August election date, August 4, 2026 and November 3, 2026. But the date you really want to focus in on is when the ballots are first mailed out, because we find approximately a third of the voters will fill out their ballot, their mail-in ballot in the first week. And so all your information, your factual information brochures, your mailers, your community meetings and everything, if you were going for an August 4, 2026 election, you really want to have all that, accomplished, say, by July 15th, 2026, if not sooner. And same with November. You look at the ballots being mailed out October 16th.
Commissioner Lawrence.
Are any of some of those are special elections, right? We got to pay for them, the whole cost.
Yeah.
So that would be the February one, special election.
Right. You bring up a great point. Yeah. In the August election, you might have a slightly higher election cost because, there might be fewer issues on there. Whereas if you go in November, you could have more issues and then share in that cost.
Or even in November, we have to share costs. We have to actually pay to get that on the ballot. Really? There's no, what?
Mr. Nelson, I did have a question for you. We've kind of maybe made an assumption here, and that is that the money is just going to be there. We can issue bonds and people are going to buy those bonds and give us money. But is that basically, for folks that are listening in, is that basically, I don't want to say guaranteed, but is that very likely that if we issue bonds, people will purchase those bonds and give us the money we're anticipating?
Yes, yeah, that's our specialty. So we coach and prepare the district for a rating presentation, get that rating grade. Then there's a preliminary official statement, similar to initial public offering for, stock prospectus. Market the bonds for a few weeks, and then our 100 institutional salespeople and 350 retail salespeople then are contacting investors. So yeah, it's a pretty interesting process. We just finished a $33 million funding for Renton Regional Fire Authority. They got a rating grade of AA+. And now there's a system that we use called iPrio. And you can actually, the commissioners and staff can sign on that day, and you'll see all these little blank grids for each year. And then the order period starts at 7:30 in the morning. And then you just start to see how the orders come in. And so it's a pretty interesting process with a high rating grade that we think you'll get. It really attracts attention from all over the nation. So it could be somebody like the Bank of Boston or whomever, money managers from all over the nation.
Okay, Commissioner Lawrence.
So you're pretty much wrapped up on your presentation? Or is there more?
No, I'm done.
Oh,
Yeah, but so happy to answer any questions.
just want to know if you were done.
Okay.
No, actually, I have a question. So, who's the expert out there that we're going to hire to try to convince the taxpayers to part with their coin?
I'm gonna have to defer to the chief on that.
So Christie's been working with a consultant.
No, that's what I said. I
yeah,
know we
so-
talked about somebody.
Yeah,
What's that?
so I think,
They have
um,
consultants that specialize
yep.
in it. Okay.
yeah, so we'll talk about that tomorrow at our capital facilities meeting, but yeah, we're looking at, the board's been gracious enough to give us staff in the PIO's office and the communication office. So we're going to need a little bit of help and maybe a little bit strategic help, work through, but yeah.
So this company that we're hiring to sell the bond, they might have some insight, but they're not the experts on really how to sell it. But we could probably ask you some questions. So have your kind of inside baseball tips.
Right,
Oh,
yeah,
okay,
just from
alright.
what we've seen. But yeah, the real expert is somebody like a Liz Loomis type
Okay.
who specializes in voter education, voter messaging, and kind of coaches you through
Okay.
all that.
But so we could
just do
get
it
some
from-
free advice from you now.
Sure,
Okay.
yeah, just
you're-
based on experience. And
You've talked
watching-
about educating, starting. That would be expensive to reach the people to how to communicate with them. Why don't we
So-
just wait to the last minute?
Right.
And they just put one paragraph on the voters pamphlet should do it, right?
Yeah, so what you want to do is, of course, you have the State Public Disclosure Commission that
Yeah.
is, overlooking everything. So as a district, you can only produce factual information. So you could put out a mailer, and you can pay for that as long as it's only factual. So it can't be persuasive. You can't ask for the yes vote, but so that's,
Put out the
that's a
facts.
common practice.
Just the
Community-
facts, ma'am, yes.
Yeah,
Okay,
community
gotcha.
meetings, having the chief and other staff members go out and speak to various community groups, HOAs, the city councils, and just making them aware of it. And sometimes we'll see then that a particular city will make a statement of support for your voted bond. For East Pierce Fire and Rescue, they had 2 new young firefighters that had training in video, basically videography, and they went around and videotaped all the stations that basically were in desperate need of help. And then when Chief Bud Backer went around to the different community areas, he would go into that neighborhood and say, here's a video of your station, and this is why we're asking for you to vote. So that was very good use of social media. And then usually we find that the unions will help support, like with signs and different things.
All right, very good. Thank you for,
So,
Commissioner Ken.
yeah, yes and no. I mean, if you remember Gig Harbor, yeah, I think they got 86% approved. That's right? The difference is that they actually build a whole training ground and everything else. And many of them are retired people, okay? So they have the money, which is EMS and all that. But we do have a challenge because when we're annexing the new city, they're already thinking they already pay a lot of money already, right? And they thought the higher rate, they don't need to be rebuilding the station. I would not take it really lightly for education, because there's a lot of con group that don't want to pay one more penny in the fire service. So it is a challenge. I don't want to be overconfident to do that. I'm too concerned about the time that we need to educate them. And of course, then we need to hire more people to do it. And so now, two quick questions on that. When we read, the interest rate will be whatever it is during the time, right? So when the buyer what are we competing with? Other bonds, all right? There's many bonds, and the thing is, I think Washington, I don't think we rely on people from Washington to buy it, right? Majority of them really outside.
Oh, yeah, a lot of them are attracted to the other 6 states that don't have a state income tax, like
Right.
in Texas. But then a lot of them they want to put their money to work. And so they're attracted to your higher rating, that it's a voter approved bond, special excess levy. And then from there, it's just what are the comparables in the marketplace and what other bond issues may be in the market on that particular day or that particular week.
So in the past, have you seen situations, some bonds are nobody buy it or not buying the total volume and all that?
We've never had that experience.
You never had that experience?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. We always sell 100% of all our bonds.
But would it be the yield when we have to hire to compete with other people? Or that's kind of formula based in there?
Yeah, that's part of our process, is to facilitate that competition amongst the investors. And so from my standpoint, it's the firm marketing the bonds a good 2 to 3 weeks before the sale date, and then looking at market conditions and all those things. If it's an unfavorable market, then I'll be the first one to tell you, let's postpone it and,
But you cannot
wait.
immediately do a discount or whatever
Yep, we
adjustment?
look at all that.
You
Yeah,
can do all that?
correct.
Okay, so then you can come back to us and say, hey,
Right, the authority would be delegated to the chiefs and maybe the chairman of the board, but it's all time sensitive. So first thing is the bond attorney, Lee Marquisio of Foster Garvey, he'll help prepare your election resolution and the ballot title. And then after the bonds, after the voters approve it and you decide when you want to issue first series, he'll prepare a bond resolution. And in that bond resolution, it'll delegate authority to the chief and probably chairman of the board. And so we set parameters that it will not exceed a certain interest rate and yield. And then we go from there because it's all time sensitive.
right. Okay.
So what I'm hoping that the board is in, kind of to pick up on what Chief Eastman said earlier, this is kind of the financial piece. I think at least for me, the serial piece was important to know about how that would, having initially gotten the bond, how you can spread that out and what you have to do to spend that in a particular period of time. Next week, we're going to talk a little bit more about the actual capital facilities plan, the actual facilities, And then I don't know about next week, but partially next week, perhaps later in this year, have the chief, the other piece that I think is important is have the chief talk about how are we actually going to have a program to build this? It's great to talk about all these facilities and then we've got money to do it, but like, who's actually going to do it? Or, is Chief Curtis going to do it? Is like, how are we actually, because it's a major construction project. How are you going to do it? It's not going to be over 1 year. So how does that actually come together? The idea being, once we get beyond budget at the end of November, we have some time in December as we kind of ramp up the education here for the board about what it takes for the bonding, what it takes for the actual capital facilities plan, how would it actually come together? We're in a place where we get to December to talk about is now the time, now meaning 2026, because maybe now isn't the time, but get the board to a place where we have enough background about all these issues, because they're complex, to try and have at least a decision point in December. Should we do it? Should we not do it? Because there are reasons to do it and there are reasons to not do it. But it would be, I think for speaking for the Capital Facilities Plan Committee, it would be nice to make a decision this year about whether it's go or no go for 2026. Because this issue has a tendency to linger. It's kind of lingered for years. And it would be a good time now to bring it to fruition to a place where the board can make a decision. I'm not foreshadowing or prejudging what that decision is, but get the board to a spot to make that decision. December might be a good time once we get beyond budget and we've got a little bit of time there at the end of the year. December is typically not quite as busy, so we have some more time for either more presentations or more discussion about it. Plus the timing of it, if we decided to go, and just assuming if we decided to go for the November general election in 2026, that leaves a good 10 months to get there. So timing wise, it works nicely, but the board will have to make that decision. But I'd like to hopefully get us to a place where we can perhaps make a decision in December.
Cause I think we need to do 26, right? If we do 27, 26 being the mid-year, midterm, it will be a much higher turnout. So it's really more difficult to get over the hump of the 40%.
Well, you might have validation issues for
Yeah.
2026, but there's lots of issues to consider. We have some time now, although we'll be busy on budget, doing 2026 budget. There is some time here in the fall to address these issues. Great. Any other questions for Mr. Nelson? Yeah. Oh, Mr. Nelson, thank you very much. We very much appreciate your presentation and the information. It's super helpful to get us up to speed.
Thank you. Great.
We'll
Nice to
see you at the
all.
commissioners conference too.
Oh, yeah, yeah. I expect you'll all be at my session.
I'll be there.
All right, next up, we have item 10B, which is an operations update and review of 2025 emergency response data with our data analyst, Jennifer Pardee, and Chief Eastman.
So Jennifer's getting set up. This is kind of where we are for 2020, we're 2025, right? 2025. Where we are for 2025, and Jennifer's kind of projected out where we think like total call demand will land. It's very similar, although I will say Jennifer's starting to put her touch on this presentation. So you'll see things presented in a different way, which I think is probably you guys will appreciate. And so with that, I'm gonna let Jennifer just start and give you an update of where we are for our operational dashboard for 2025.
Okay. Just waiting for it to come up on the screen. Okay, perfect. So just like we did earlier this year, we're going to go through and look at our numbers and where everything looks. And so what you see on your screen right now is a overview of the slides that we'll go through. Let me go ahead and put this in presenter mode real quick. Okay, to jump right in. Looking at how many incidents we've had, the data that you're looking at is going to be from January through August of 2025. And so you're seeing the historical data points there for 22, 23, 24. And then the black portion is what we currently have through August for 2025. So we've had roughly 25,234 calls. And if we stay on that trajectory, we're going to end the year at 37,851 calls. And so we're kind of leveling off from what we had before. So our data before pre-2022, we had significant growth going from 19 to 22, and that's primarily just because we had some crazy noise in our data with the pandemic in 2020 and 2021. However, we're starting to level off and see a consistent 2 to 3% growth is what we're projecting. And then we have it broken out on the next slide here, looking at 24 to 25, the type of calls that we respond to. Primarily, our biggest portion is basic life support. And you'll notice from 24 to 25, it's very consistent. The only change is that we went from 53% BLS down to 52, and the ALS is where the extra 1% was gained. But every other spot stayed very consistent. And so there's really no change there as far as how it's broken out. But at the bottom of each of them, you can see the exact call amounts for basic life support, advanced life support, and then all of our fire calls, and then along with our other category, which is primarily service calls and law enforcement calls.
Yeah, Jennifer, has that increased just going along with the increased population, pretty much keeping pace with it, that 2%?
For the 2%, you know, I did not overlay it with our population growth, but that is something I could simply do to just look at those key pieces. One of our growth factors was because we started servicing the city of Mill Creek. And so that was one of our growth factors in there, not in the last 2 years, but I believe that was the jump from 22 to 23.
Sorry, Commissioner Teoflat, go ahead.
How do we know what our population is?
How do we, well, I usually, yeah.
We do it a couple different ways. I know we use Steve Wheeler, who takes the 2020 census data, could break it out by census tract. And so we overlay that to our geopolitical area, and that's part of it. And then I believe this year they did a mid-year or a 25 adjustment, and then we update it through between census times because the cities update their population base, so we adjust. And outside of the every 10-year census, we guess as we're moving up. That's how we do it. And we typically when the census data comes out, Steve does it, plots it on GIS based on the census tract for population. We take our geopolitical area and say, okay, here's what the census data says our population is. We start there. And then if the cities are showing, 5 years at the 5-year mark, showing an increase of 3%, then we make adjustments accordingly. And then really we do that. And then in 2030, we'll get the new census data in 2031 and update it that way.
Go ahead.
Okay. The next slide is just looking at incidents by month and day. You'll notice at the top there, we're right on par with previous years of what we're seeing broken out by month. And then as far as the day, we're obviously, it appears as though it's short, but it's because we don't have the whole year in there. However, you do notice that the average calls per day in our South County Fire boundaries is 104, which again, on par for what we did last year. Moving into incidents and dispatches by station area. So incidents is at the incident level, where the dispatch means the amount of units that were dispatched to the calls. And so that's the difference between those two. I've modeled them here for you to look this way. So they're the exact same data modeled 2 ways, but I actually incorporated on the next slide, I think a better way of looking at this data. So again, Steve Wheeler, GIS, does an amazing job of being able to model our data so that we can see geographically the saturation of where our call volume is throughout. and each of the station locations, and you'll see there's the incident count along with the unit wheel turns that occurred inside of that station first due area.
So that is accurate where the accident happened, incident happened, right? color.
Correct.
So the
Mhm.
darker it is, that means more call go into it.
Correct.
So now, it may not necessary, the dispatchers from within the similar station, right? The station can come out from other way.
Correct. So
So-
unit wise, the units could be coming from any station first due area, but the saturation of the calls
If,
is what you're seeing here for the darkest being higher quantity of calls in that location.
so when you have it's a unit dispatch. So basically incident, I'm going back to 15,
Okay,
incident 3,667,
yes,
but there's a dispatch from all over with 8,818.
correct. That's the amount of units to service those incidents.
So that means a lot of other one come from other station to go to serve that.
Correct. It could still be their own station primarily servicing that location.
Right.
However, it is going to utilize resource from neighboring stations.
Okay. So with 15 being the busiest station,
Mhm.
but still they need help from some other stations a lot.
And I think it's a global system.
Right.
So our deployment is a global model where you have neighboring stations that are going to help other stations because you will see concurrent calls. We have 15 fire stations and the odds of us having more than one call going on at any given time is going to be likely in prime peak hours of the day.
But which we all know, like station 23, 22, Hilltop, and those probably, in general, they don't dispatch as many, or they really do go to help other.
So they have less call demand,
Right,
but they do support the other stations. So we can get the data that shows how many calls did engine 22 go on, right?
Right.
We're looking at it at the number of units going into service areas, right? We can look at that. Jennifer looks at that. I know John and the rest of the ops folks look at that. But this is kind of a snapshot of the number of incidents we have in their station first due areas, and then the number of resources that's supporting those calls in those first due areas.
yeah, I think most of the solar station, that's my concern, is to get the work even out. Right? Is this something we can do or really? not?
You're challenged, right?
Right.
I mean, the reality is if you look at our slower stations, they all continue to get busier. And I guess I'll say we've identified, if you look at where 11, 10, 15, 19, and 20 are, there's 3 infill fire stations that we know we need in those areas. Again, if you look at the more dense areas, Station 15, we have a station up at Alderwood Mall Parkway. We want to build in a station down at Value Village or 216th and 99, which will relieve the call demand at Station 15 and level it out, right? And so, and the other thing to look at is the Edmonds Bowl, the density is what it is. If you look at Station 22 right now, that's their density 13. But if you look at what's happening along the 99 corridor, that's where all our density is happening in the RFA. And
Right.
and what you're seeing, if we go back and look at the facilities plan back in 2016, we were showing this is what was going to happen, and it is. The challenge though is we don't control the growth and we don't control the density, and that's what's driving Station 15's call demand is they just have more people per square mile than 22,
Right.
and it's going to be that way for a while.
But eventually, when 22 moved down to the high school, that will improve quite a bit. That's
Well,
what we expected.
yeah, and it will help support Station 15 from the east and be, as we move it up, it may cover some of that service area and take some of the burden off of 15. If you were to build Value Village or the Heights or the Alderwood Mall Parkway station, it will decrease significantly the call demand at Station 15, which is part of why, we identified info fire stations years ago and why they're in the plan is because at some point I can't put any more resources at Station 15. I don't have
Right.
I don't have enough bays and so we need to augment it by stations to the north and stations to the south, which is in our plan.
Or which one, I'm gonna focus on 22, because we spend a lot of money moving that only a mile, but that moving will help, I think,
Chief Anderson.
Yeah, just to help out what Chief was saying too, that remember that core area of 99 and 15's area, during the day, that population increases over 3 times during the day versus night. And that's pretty consistent along that 99 corridor. And 22 is moving over to an area that will increase improve its times to get into Linwood as well.
Okay, that's why reason we should tax the transient. Okay,
Commissioner Lawrence.
Yeah, I'm trying to get my head around this map. Is there another map that, because this isn't too relevant for anybody except maybe the chiefs, when they're figuring this stuff out. So is there a map that per capita spread out calls? I mean, is there a hot spot for when people just make a lot of calls? I mean, per capita, it's not even?
The hottest spot we've got is probably 216th and the highway. From what we've seen, ironically, that's where you're going to put one of your stations, or hopefully we will.
Where is that?
216th and the highway, right there
What
at the
highway?
hospital district in down towards Swedish Edmonds.
Okay, but
So
averaged out per cap, but they got health issues down there, what?
there's just more
More
people.
fires? What?
No, there's just more people.
Well, I know, and to spread it out, not density,
Yeah.
but per capita. I mean, this, the same, 100,000 people in this area have twice as many calls as 100,000 people over here. Can you ever?
Yeah, I hear what
you're.
you're saying now. Now that I understand what you're asking, let me see if I can take back and Steve and Jennifer can work through that. I think what you're going to find, to a certain extent, is you're not going to see this population base of this number of people and this population, this number of people having that disparate of a call demand. I think what you're going to see is
Pretty average.
is average, and you're going to see if you, again, we'll take the Linwood Station service area, put the population base in it, Station 10 service area, put the population there, look at the number of calls, and what you'll probably find is that you're going to get, on average, right, you're going to get X amount of calls per 1,000 population, and that would probably work out in every one of the categories. If you look at the population of 22 and the call demand, you're probably seeing, for the most part. Then there's also socioeconomic, and there's all those other
Right.
things that play into
Age,
it
If you have
too.
a where there's a lot of,
Yeah.
like
Yep.
people older than me.
Yep.
Let's say.
Yeah. Yep.
In one spot.
Yeah.
Then that could be a more, in which community paramedics then would help out a lot there.
And so-
Education. So I don't need to come back with me any information.
Well,
But I mean,
now-
I don't know if it any value to.
Now I'm
figuring
curious
anything out.
about it because I that would be an interesting number to know that.
Well, I do know that
You know?
Wheeler pulled, when we did heat maps for our deployment, Steve Wheeler did show us where a lot of the adult family homes were very high predictability. If you look at 216th and the highway, there are a lot of adult nursing and facilities within that
Time for a
area.
special assessment then.
Right, right. So there, in multifamily dwellings, look at where you find multifamily dwellings too, along that
Right,
99
yeah.
strip.
That's where I was gonna go. Okay, moving into the next, we're just gonna look at incidents by hour of day. I don't think this is anything new for you guys. You've seen this where you see peak times during the day where our call volume is, with the 1 o'clock hour in 2025 being our busiest hour.
so it still show the first 8 hours is much slower, everybody goes to sleep, right?
Well,
Okay,
I think if you go back, again, you're seeing the same curve. But if you go back, when we started doing this 10 years ago, the number of calls during those hours of the day though were significantly less. And so we're getting busier in what we would not call our peak times. And so I guess I want to just make sure the board knows our, our, our lines look the same. But if you actually go back and look at 10 years ago, 5 years ago, and look at this chart, the chart on the side that shows the number of incidents was probably 250 instead of 500 to start, right? And so we are running more calls across the whole spectrum, which means our nighttime call demand, even though it's not our peak demand, is going up. That I guess I want to make sure we just don't look at the arrow. There's other pieces, and our call demand 24 hours a day is going up. It's just our peak demands are still during the daylight, 1 o'clock in the afternoon. But what we used to average 1 or 2 calls at night, and I'm making that number up, we're now at 5, is what is, and that this doesn't show that unless you realize that the number of incidents that we had there 5 years ago were at 250 instead of 500 because we had less calls.
Yeah, but I think we still, there are less populations and all
Yep.
of that stuff, right? So if you divide it up, probably you look at per call per station, maybe similar. You know, we'll take a look at that, yeah.
But Chief, I would just add that looks like the rationale for peak activity units still exists there to address the largest call volume during the middle of the day.
Yep, has not gone away.
That hasn't changed over the years.
And I don't suspect, unless you see major changes in the makeup of South County, this is probably going to be fairly consistent. And we're going to see this dynamic again. And you are seeing the peak demand for us is still 12, 1 o'clock. And that's been consistent for many, many, many years.
Well, and to your point, they're just looking at that data. If we took the 0 o'clock hour and you rounded roughly to 1,000, that's saying you're having 3 calls occur in that hour every day. And so you're just starting to break that out and fundamentally look at how busy you are at different times, and it is increasing as our call volume increases. It's evenly distributed amongst the trend that has occurred over the years. Moving on to response times. Here you're going to notice that in 2025 for the data through August, it's 9 minutes and 26 seconds. I this morning got our most recent data for September, and with the most recent data that actually has gone down to 9 minutes and 24 seconds. So we had a good month of September. And we have met our standard of 8 minutes, 78.7% of the time through August. Moving on to turnout times, we've got the same thing of 2 minutes and 54 seconds, just 1 second up from where it was last year at the end of the year. And again, the funny thing is adding September's data in there, we went down a second. So we're actually sitting at 2 minutes and 53 seconds. So we're right on par with where we were last year. However, you'll notice up at 2025 that we met the standard of 2 minutes and 15 seconds a little over 74% of the time. Moving into our EMS
Can you
trans.
stop with it?
Oh, sorry.
In
Yep.
the turnout time, it used to be, I know we have done a lot, during the nighttime is much slower. Is that still the case?
You know what? I don't know if we're doing daytime, nighttime, Commissioner Chan, right now. I'm not sure what. I would say our nighttime probably lags a little bit because I know we're busier during the day, and crews are in their rigs often when they get their calls and they're up and about. And
Right.
so I would expect that the daytime turnout times are faster, but remember, we're measuring at the 90%, and a third of our calls happen at night. And so that's impacting, turnout times. And I think when we did the capital studies plan study in 2016, we actually went and did considerable effort in measuring what the turnout times would be based on the size of the station, where people sleep, all those pieces, and then followed up the science methodology that they did and the math problem followed up with, I want to say it was Captain Smith, Clayton Smith, on light duty, went and timed himself moving around.
Right.
And in that study, at the best we were going to be able to do is about 2 minutes and 36 seconds at the 90% as a result of that work. But we've been consistent around 2 minutes and 2 minutes, 50 seconds. And remember, one of the things that is becoming more prevalent, and I don't know the numbers, and maybe Chief Chalfant knows, is that when we get calls for scenes of violence, crews are putting body armor on before they leave the station. That is impacting turnout times, and it's happening far more frequently than it did, like I said, 5 years ago. And so I don't know the exact numbers. I'm not going to put John on the spot, but there are some things that we are doing for crew safety, i.e., putting on body armor that 5 years ago was something we did on rare occasions, and it's happening more frequently. And when you look at the 90%, it doesn't take very many that throw out. So I think there's other things, variables in here. I haven't looked at them. I haven't looked at that specific stuff for a long time, but there's other impacts, Commissioner Chan, as part of
I
that too.
remember they would intensively go and do a stopwatch and how to improve the whole thing, right? 'Cause hopefully the travel time will be less in midnight, right? So overall, that may be helping it. I don't know, but it was just curious, are these still kind of paying attention to that?
Go ahead.
Moving into the next slide, we're looking at our EMS transports. And again, you'll notice year over year, we're right on par with where we've been in previous years for our transport totals. Then we move into automatic aid, and this screenshot here, we're looking at the unit level, which means the actual apparatus. And so the apparatus that are dispatched versus the apparatus that actually arrive. And then the black line is just kind of showing you, along with the right there, how many hours, minutes, and seconds basically those units spend on those calls. And so you see the left is given and the right is what was received. The next slide is going to kind of be a summary of this for you to quickly look at, just to kind of say, okay, given versus received based on arrivals of the units. And on the far right, what is the difference of the given versus received? And so we're on par with where we were. I was looking at previous numbers from last year and nothing seemed askew. It does appear here that we actually are giving more, with the exception of Everett, where there was a discrepancy of 10, where they gave us 10 more unit responses than we gave them.
But if I see that District 4, we're giving them 58, we won't get 4. That's a huge difference.
And a lot of that is going to just be geographically because of road network system, where they have pockets in their district they will never be able to get to faster than where our stations are located. So dispatch is going to send our units to some of those pockets.
Right, but in the past, some of our commissioners are really sensitive about that. I don't know what we can do.
So I will tell you right now, with our auto aid given and received, we're in a really good place. I mean, if you look at the numbers, and if Jennifer would go back one slide and look at time on task, which is the other aspect you need to look at, we're in line. And again, one of the challenges we have with District 4 is Seattle Hill Road.
Right.
Is part of that's in their area. And quite frankly, Station 13, Station 77 are, 8 minutes closer. And that has continued population. And in the grand scheme, I get when you're talking 54 calls to their 4, it sounds like a huge discrepancy, but in the grand scheme of everything we do, it's really a small number. It's not impacting our response, and there's constant conversations going on with us in District 4. And there's a good relationship there and working through other things, and we're getting things back in a different way. So from my perspective, watching what's going on with our auto aid and mutual aid and given and received, we are far more in line with our partners than we have been in the past. I remember having 2,000 call discrepancies and 3,800 call discrepancies, and we're not there. And so I can tell you, I meet with the majority of those chiefs on a regular basis, a couple, 3 times a month in different meetings, and we're all in a good place with automatic mutual aid, given and received, and have the same philosophical perspective that we need to make sure that we're sending appropriate resources and not worry about geopolitical boundaries, and make sure we're taking care of the people we're here to serve. And again, I don't think anything's so out of balance that we're in a bad place with any of our neighbors right now.
Well, Bothell is 65 and then 11. So if the hilltop being moved down, would that change the dynamic a little bit?
It might.
Okay.
It might. It might put Station 44 closer to the southern part of 22 service area.
Right.
We'll keep watching that as
Okay.
we, when 22 gets built and we make the move, we'll continue to watch that and make sure we're being good neighbors, and if there's discrepancies, we'll talk about it and figure out how to solve them.
And I just want to point out, this is taking into consideration South County Fire has dispatched over 55,000 wheel turns for the units this year. Just to kind of that frame of mind
Right.
of how much in the large scale that we run. Moving into the next slide is the auto aid by incident level. So now you're rolling up from the unit to the actual incident. And you're going to see the dispatches versus arrivals along with the percentage of arrivals. You can see how often is that agency actually arriving on scene. And the next slide will be the breakdown for you to kind of see the same thing that we just saw before, to look at given versus received and where the differences are amongst the agencies for given versus received. So you'll notice both Everett, Mukilteo, even SRFR, there's 6 where that's the first time I've seen that, where it was usually inverse. So they gave us more than we gave them. And then Everett, we were on par, maybe a little bit higher than we were from last year at this time. And Mukilteo were actually better than we were at this time last year.
And again, it's important. This is the incident level, which is at the call. The slide before that was the number of units that go. And so we're giving you the automatic aid and mutual aid given and received in multiple ways. The incident level, the unit level, time on task, arrival, because if you just looked at one piece, the number of incidents doesn't tell you the whole story. Because yes, Everett, at the incident level, there was more. We were behind Everett. But if you go look at the units responding, we were -10, not -106. And if you look at the time on task, we were almost equal. So there's multiple things we look at and not just one piece of the automatic mutual aid conversation, because the number of dispatches are one thing. The number of unit arrives are one thing. Time on task is which people are committed is one thing. The incident level is one thing. And so we look at multiple facets because historically it became political, and we ended up looking at other things because at the incident level doesn't tell you the whole story. And so I want the board to know we do this because the automatic mutual aid given and received is a little bit more complex, and want to make sure we're not looking at just one element. We're looking at them all together because it truly tells the picture. Are we being fair and equitable? Are we being received and given and all those pieces at the end?
Commissioner Lawrence.
So we really don't, as we're going along through the days and the weeks and the years, we don't have a choice about how this is going to turn out. We just get the call. But what I'm getting out of this is there's a built-in dysfunction because of the location of stations, but that's mitigated by what's going on at the time, where everybody's at the time. But 9/11, they try to dispatch the fire service for that area, or are they just the closest?
So
What's
I would say that we try really hard to send the closest appropriate unit regardless.
We.
I'm saying my agency, our agency.
Okay, but we don't have a choice over there. We're being sent by, no.
So philosophically, our neighbors and us agree a closest appropriate unit should respond. So regardless of boundaries, right? Now, there are, like, for example, we just had this conversation, City of Everett, before they pull one of our medic units, their run cards say that if they have a medic unit that's available within 8 minutes, send Everett's medic unit. So there are some nuances in that, right? Everett has private ambulance that comes and does their BLS work. So they dispatch a private ambulance. So sometimes that means they don't need our BLS resource because they have private ambulance doing that resource. There are things where we do to make sure the stuff given and received is fair. But I will also say there's places that Station 7 is going to always be closest to, and they're always going to be the ones respond, and we won't go on a single engine response because they're just the closest appropriate unit to go, and they go and handle it. Same thing with District 7, same thing with Mukilteo. So, we just had a conversation at the Chiefs conference, Chiefs lunch, where we try really hard to take away the geopolitical boundaries and send the fire service resource or the EMS resource that's needed for the event. And there's each agency has a different flavor of what that means, but we really do try hard to send the appropriate closest unit. And then if we're out of balance, staff will work with whatever agency will out of balance staff to figure out how to fix it. And we haven't had to do that in a long time. Our numbers have been pretty equal in totality.
Well, what can you do to fix it? I mean, you can't just lift up that
Well,
station and move it over
for,
here.
for,
So
you
there
know,
must
for
be-
example,
there's
if
some
you,
tricks,
you can move resources around.
like more engines at this
Or,
place.
yeah, or if you put a specialty unit on the fringe, moving it up the hill, some of the
Yeah,
things we
yeah,
talked about where it doesn't get pulled as often or things we do. There's the ability to,
These are workarounds for
yeah, and-
where the locations are.
Yep, and for like transport units, you can, if you get the first arriving unit there and the transport unit can take a little longer to get there, you can say, we want our transport unit if it's within this time frame and not pull it other agencies' transport unit. So there are things we can do where we have some limitations with our current CAD, but we're working on potential solutions for it. But for the most part, I don't think I think in 2018, we had a very challenging relationship with District 4 when it came to automatic mutual aid, given and received. I think that's gone. I don't think we've had another issue like that since. And I guess I'll go back to say, based on the work Jennifer does and what her and Steve track, our mutual aid numbers, both given and received, are in a really, really good place, even though we may be with District 4's the anomaly, but again, it's a small number of calls. We've got a different working relationship with District 4 and get benefits in other ways, to where we're in a really, really good place in the fire chief's opinion.
Well, let's complete the presentation and then have final questions. Ms. Pardee, anything else for the
Oh, it's
presentation?
not, oh, I thought it's finished.
We're not
I
done.
actually believe that was our last slide.
Last slide, okay. Additional
Question.
questions?
No, I just
Commissioner,
want,
and then we're gonna go to a break. So,
no, I'm just
Commissioner Shannon.
complimenting you. I love this report because that's only way that communicate with commissioner that how we're doing. I know for a long time we struggle. Chief Yeastman probably know all kinds of software and all the dashboard report. That doesn't matching their reports, and one of the commissioner really sensitive about that and all that stuff. So this is good, and I hope we can do it quarterly. That would be great. You're still using the same software and other things, and
We use Jennifer. She's exceptionally good at what she does.
yeah, but
And so, yeah, we've We use Excel, we use Power BI. Jennifer has all sorts of tools.
Oh,
We
so-
continually look at other tools.
Okay,
But between her and Steve, we're using predominantly the same tools we've been using, and they're continuing to look at what's
Yeah.
out there and
yeah,
how to
but
better
with
do what we
AI
do.
now and all that stuff, I thought whatever good program, you don't have spending her hour, it can be used somewhere else. This is really great. I love it. Thank you.
Good, I'm so glad.
Other questions from board members? If not, thank you, Ms. Party.
Thank you.
Very good. And with that, we'll go to our evening break. Let's take about a, I don't know, 9-minute break there on the clock to about 10, until about 10 minutes to 9. And so without objection, we'll be in a brief recess. All right, we are back on the record for the board meeting. It's about 5 to 9, and we are moving on to our next section of our agenda, which is item 10C, 2026 budget. And I'll turn that over. I believe we have CFO Bothwell is with us this evening. Good evening, Mr. Bothwell.
Good evening, Chair. Good evening, Commissioners. I've got a brief presentation for you. Okay, when we presented the Chief's preliminary budget, we mentioned there were a few topics that the administration wanted to dig into in some detail with the board. So tonight is the first of those presentations. So on this first slide, it's just a reminder of what the topics were that we were proposing. So this first one is the general fund ending cash and investment strategy. That's the subject of tonight's presentation. The others are the self-insurance fund strategy, which is a lot like what we're going to do tonight, but for the self-insurance fund. There's some policy updates that we're proposing. And then there was a sort of a maybe topic that we put out there, and that was to model the 10-year forecast to include applying our funding guiding principles. I think since that was proposed, there's been some interest in it. So I think that's something we'll continue to pursue with the board for a future agenda as well. So I'll start with some background just for context. Fund balance is the value of cash and investments that we have on hand. I'm using in the context of the materials that are in your packet and also this presentation, fund balance and cash and investments. I'm sort of using them interchangeably. Our policies establish a fund balance target that is the value of cash and investments that we attempt to have on hand at the end of the year. The purpose of holding a specific amount of cash and investments at the end of the year is to fund operations during revenue collection cycles in the subsequent year. So you all are fairly aware that we have a revenue collection cycle that has most of our revenues come in semi-annually, so twice a year. And we need to fund operations during the long periods between those payments. And so that's why we hold a lot of money in fund balance. And it's the reason we establish fund balance targets that are aligned with those actual cash needs. So our current fund balance target for the general fund is 120 days of operating expenditures. That was increased from 90 days earlier this year when we did our annual policy update. The 2026 proposed budget, so the Chief's preliminary budget forecasts that we will end 2026 with 102 days of operating expenditures. So exceeding the previous target, but not quite meeting the target that will be in effect for 2026. And in dollars, that's a $6 million shortfall. So the strategy is to accumulate cash and investments in the general fund by underspending the budget. And I've got it's a fairly simple concept. And so in this table, I've sort of illustrated what it is, not using our numbers, but just using some kind of generic round numbers. So in this example, we would have you'd start the year with a beginning fund balance of $1 million. We'd budget revenues of $5 million, and we'd budget expenditures of $5 million. So we're budgeting revenue to satisfy all the needs of the budget. Our actual revenues, though, would come in at $5 million like budgeted, but our actual expenditures come in at $4.5 million. So we underspent the budget by $500,000, which would cause us to end the year with $1,500,000 in fund balance. So just by underspending the budget, fully funding the budget, then underspending it, we've increased our fund balance in this example by $500,000. And so that illustrates the concept that this strategy is. So the requirement, and this is in your packet materials, it's just in there with the rest of the assumptions, but this one I wanted to call out because it's really important. And it's that current year revenues will be sufficient to fund current year expenditures until the target is received. So in this example, the revenues are $5 million and the expenditures are $5 million. So we're not budgeting a deficit, and that would be required to make this strategy work. So the timeline to achieve the target based on the strategy would be about 2 years. So if we kind of held the line and implemented this strategy for next 2 budget cycles, so 26, 27, by the end of 27, we would expect to have achieved that target. Just really quickly, some strategy assumptions. So the current year revenues will be sufficient to fund current year expenses. So this is the one I sort of highlighted earlier. We just need a complete offset of what we're budgeting for expenditures. The forecasted 2025 ending fund balance will be close to the forecasted value. So in the budget book, you'll see we forecasted how we're going to end the current year. And we're going to have a moderate surplus. And so that is accounted for in this strategy as well. If it's significantly different, I don't expect that it would be, then we would have to reevaluate the strategy. It could take us longer to achieve the target. It could actually take us a shorter period of time to achieve the target. Actual revenues will match the forecast, and I'll get into where there's some risk on that topic on the next slide. This is a really important one. The emergent unbudgeted expenditures will be funded from non-general fund sources. So what we're saying here is that we know things kind of pop up and we change course. A lot of times we identify savings within the current budget to fund some of those emergent needs. And we would need to continue to do that and also look for opportunities to fund those things outside of the general fund. What's really important to this strategy is that we have like excellent budget discipline, and we really stay the course with the funding plan and don't load the budget up mid-year with a bunch of additional expenditures, because obviously that's going to minimize the underspend. The actual underspend, so the next one is the actual underspend will be consistent with historical. Over the last 4 years, there's a chart in your packet materials. Over the last 4 years, we've underspent the budget by about $4 million per year. So we're expecting that to continue with this strategy. And then the target will not increase significantly. So the 2-year timeline does account for some growth in our budget that requires us to set aside some additional fund balance. But it's not, and that's factored in. But if there was a significant change to the target, like it increased significantly as a result of some additional hiring or something that's not contemplated in the current roadmap or the current spending plan, then that could also require us to go back and take a look at the strategy. So the risks for this strategy, and these are based on the assumptions I just listed. The revenue forecast doesn't materialize. So most of our revenue, the property tax and benefit charge, is very stable, and we will get what we ask for the most part. The variances are generally very small. Our largest revenue that there's risk associated with is GEMT. And if there's a partial or complete loss of GEMT, that would cause either the timeline to be extended, or if there was a complete loss, we would probably need to go back and retool the strategy and rethink how we approach this fund balance shortfall. On the other side of the equation for expenditures, the non-discretionary expenditure increases could be problematic as well. The biggest risk we have there is healthcare self-insurance claims. You all have heard me say many times that healthcare self-insurance right now has a very different experience than it's had for basically the life of the program. And the claims are very, very high. So if that continues, that could be to the detriment of this strategy as well. I don't expect that the volume of that, if it did continue at current levels, I don't expect that it would cause us to need to retool. It could. We might need to adjust, but more likely it would just extend the timeline a little bit. So, and we'll have more about the self-insurance fund itself and what that forecast looks like at a future meeting. That's a topic that we really need to get into in a little more detail too. But in the context of this presentation, it's just our largest expenditure risk.
CFO Bothwell.
Yeah, CFO Bothwell, Commissioner Furnoff has a question.
Sorry about interrupting, but you had a slide there for GEMT, and that prompted me to think, hey, I should ask you about that email.
Yeah, thanks for that.
We weren't getting any responses back from them for a little while, right?
Yeah, right. So we still haven't received from them the amount that we're going to receive for the 2024 cost report. They told me in about the middle of September, it should be about 30 days. So we're expecting to get that hopefully within the next week. We'll know what they're going to pay us for that cost report. And then we'll probably receive that money within a couple of weeks. So We should have it. I'll let you all know as soon as we get the number. And I'll share how that compares to what we have forecasted in the revenue forecast. But we will get some clarity on that. So I appreciate that that note from you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Good.
All
Go
right,
ahead.
so
Yeah. Go
did you
ahead.
want me to stop? Okay.
No, no,
So
go ahead.
for alternatives, this slide is very broad. There are alternative strategies that we could implement. Just simply stated, we could fund the shortfall in the 2026 budget. There's a number of ways that we could do that, and this isn't very specific, but we could increase revenue. So we could put more on the, increase the benefit charge or property taxes. Or we could decrease expenditures. So we haven't identified any places where we would do that, but that would be another option we could look into. And of course, we could do a combination of both those things. And the result of that would just be to get that fund balance up to the 120 days faster. And we can explore that in more detail if the board's interested. It's not neither of those options are probably very attractive, but we could definitely do some work on that if the board was interested. So we are proposing a policy update related to this item. So currently our policy regarding not achieving the fund balance target states that whether the target is achieved should be disclosed in the budget document. Sort of stops there. Well, it totally stops there. These are new policies though. So as they mature, I thought this was an opportunity to take a look at those and see if we could put some additional guidance in there for when we encounter this situation. So the proposed addition is to say that the administration shall propose a plan to meet the target. So it kind of forces staff to say we're gonna advance something to deal with this issue, not just disclose it and sort of walk away. Not that we would do that, but our policy isn't explicit that we're going to propose a plan, and that the proposed plan should not exceed 3 years, which seems like a reasonable period of time to rectify a shortfall in fund balance. And so the actual markup on that is in the budget book, and it's in red line in the very back of the book where we have the policies. I put those changes in there just in red line with like effectively track changes. So you can see what the actual verbiage is, but this is what we're sort of trying to accomplish, is just to build out those policies so it gives some guidance when we get into the situation about exactly what we're supposed to be doing. So that's the end of my presentation. So let me take this down, see if there's any questions about that.
Questions from the board members on this, for this particular issue for Mr. Bothwell? Great, thank you. I think we're ready to move on then to 2025 or 2026 budget discussion from the board. You've had the presentation at the last meeting of the chief's budget. Are there questions from the board members, comments, thoughts about 2026 budget? Commissioner Chan, you're usually good for a 2026 budget comment.
I'm on my my questioning already, so I'll defer next week.
Okay. Any other questions, comments? I did want to chime in with a couple of, I guess, concerns. And I guess my first concern is that we haven't received the, I'm calling it the 2025 GEMT money based on the 2024, I think expense payments or expense plan. I can't remember, CFO Bothwell, the way you described it, but based on the 2024 numbers. But I mean, CFO Bothwell, you seemed to be optimistic a moment ago about receiving those. You mentioned like within weeks, but it's overdue. And with the federal government shut down, are they really going to be sending out GEMT money?
Yeah, so Chair, that's a great question. I think that our agency has elected to receive payments all in one lump sum at the end of the reporting period, effectively. Other agencies have been receiving those payments throughout. They receive an estimated payment every month throughout the 12 months that would have been ended with the fiscal. So it's a fiscal year end. It's 6/30 fiscal year end. And they would have received those payments all throughout the year. And then there's like a reconciliation they do at the end where they might owe some money back or get some additional funds based on the actual numbers. So because we elect to get it later, we do receive it later, but I think other agencies have already been paid for this, and I think the state has probably received their money under this program from the federal government already. So I think there's a high likelihood that we're going to get the one we're waiting on. There are no guarantees right now, but that would be my guess. I think that the future payment, so the payment that we would receive in 2026 is probably, less certain. But I do think that in the context of the 2026 budget, we will have clarity on, well, I expect that we should have clarity on the payment that we're going to get in 2025 before we get too much further down the road, because we've got over a month before the budget's scheduled to be considered for adoption. And I really do think we're going to get some clarity on this topic before then. And like I said, I'll let the board know anytime I have any updates on this. And I expect to see something in the next week or probably next week.
Okay. So one of my concerns is that we don't have the 2025 GEMT money, and that makes me a little nervous about a $10.7 million hole in our 2025 budget. But then I move on to the 2026 forecast, which is actually for less GEMT money, 8.8 million. But I am concerned that we are not going to get that. Is the federal government going to cut that program? I mean, there's just all sorts of weird things happening at the federal level with monies being pulled back, things that you think are a contract and are set in stone are just with the, wave of a wand are removed. And I am a little concerned that we are relying for 2026 on 8.8 million in federal dollars, which, we've described it as a federal entitlement and it'll never go away and it's rock solid and all sorts of good things. And it has been for years and years. It has been very reliable, but I am concerned about whether it is reliable for next year. And we're relying on that for 8.8 million. It's a little less than 10% of our budget for 2026. It's not a small sum. So I'm just concerned about betting the bank and on that 8.8 million because I feel less and less confident without actually being in hand. And I don't quite know how to resolve that. Maybe it doesn't need to be resolved yet. We have a little more time. I would feel a little better, if we had the 2025 money come in. If the 2025 money doesn't come in, then I'm really concerned. Well, first of all, we have a $10 million problem. And then I'm concerned about an $8 million problem. But we're setting up a 2026 budget that's going to hire 30 firefighters at a cost of
There goes the AAA rating.
well, it's a lot of money. I think it's actually $7 million for the 30 firefighters. And I am, that's roughly equivalent to that $8 million of GEMT money. And I am just a little hesitant with the uncertainty regarding GEMT to bet the bank that that's going to come in and leave ourselves with an $8 million hole to fill, which, one might argue, well, sure, you can just raise some more taxes. But we can also look ahead to next year and see there could be a problem. And do we want to be a little more conservative about that? And so this is kind of where the rubber hits the road of what we talked about, in my mind, of what we talked about at the spring workshop, how we would like to embrace this roadmap to do these good things. But now we're talking about financially paying for it. And we were, I feel like the conversation was more confident about GEMT in June than perhaps it is now. And I want to make a cautionary note about now we actually have to pay for the stuff. And where does that leave us with the GEMT? Because one possible solution is don't do that and wait to see if we actually get the GEMT money, because if it doesn't come in, we save ourselves an $8 million hole in the budget. So I'm not quite sure how to resolve that. We are, when you look at this budget, we are significant. There are, in the scale of South County Fire, the percentages are not as large because we're getting bigger and bigger in our budget. But the amount of dollars that we have coming in next year versus this year predicted, as long as you throw in the GEMT, is significant, with about $8 million in new money from Edmonds, 3.5 million in an additional property tax increase, and 3.5 million in fire benefit charge increase, for a total of about 15 million in fresh dollars next year. And so it's not small, but that's also predicated on the 8.8 million GEMT. And so in the context of what's, well over $100 million budget, that's percentage-wise not that large, but it is not small dollars. So I'm just not quite sure the best way to resolve that, but I did want to highlight that, because I think particularly as around, we're really betting the bank on the GEMT, and I personally am not as confident in that anymore. And so we're about to engage in a large hiring, endeavor. And I'm concerned that, when we hire a bunch of people, we like to keep them. And I would like to keep them too, but you got to pay for them, because I know one thing, they want to get paid. Because I'd hate to hire people and then be in the position of, well, now you got to raise taxes more mid-year, or borrow from your reserves and raise taxes more than next year to pay for them. Or the other side, which CFO Bothwell mentioned a moment ago, is make your expenditures match your revenues, lay them off. That's the other route you could go. I would sure hate to hire people and then lay them off, because we bet the bank on GEMT and it didn't come in. So I just want to highlight that, because it's a concern that I think is different than past years. And I have less and less confidence in the federal government coming through. And so anyways, one of the challenges that I am seeing. One of the other things that I wanted to raise was a separate issue around public records requests. And that is South County Fire is receiving an increasing number of public records requests, and there's nothing we can do about public records requests. The public, or even members of South County Fire, are free to make public records requests as they wish. And there's nothing we can do about, we can't tell people not to. We can't condition that in any way, but we can respond by having enough resources to deal with public records issues. And so I think that we should consider the need for more resources, another FTE into our public records. I'm just going to call it another public records person to assist with that, to respond to the ever increasing public records issues that we have. And so I wanted to bring that to the board's attention, because I think that is something that we haven't talked about, but I am aware of increasing public records requests. And I think we need to make sure that we have a government agency of our size just has to, part of being a government agency is you have to have adequate resources to respond to public records requests. And there's significant liability if you don't, in terms of timelines and litigation that you open yourselves to. And there's nothing we can do about public records requests, but we can provide adequate resources to respond to them. So I'm hoping the chief can actually maybe address that at one of our upcoming meetings to talk a little bit more about that. But that's one of the things that I have identified that is an issue, I think, going forward for us. And there was one more thing that but now I am, I did want to highlight, because it skipped, I don't know. I didn't jump out to me until I had reread the budget materials, but I did want to highlight that the additional $3.5 million of benefit charge money that comes from a 65% increase in the fire benefit charge 2025 to 2026. So 65%, the actual dollar amount from 7.9 million to 13 million in the context of our budget is not huge, but a 65% increase is a significant percentage increase. And I didn't know what that foretold for the future. We've talked a little bit about, in the context of Edmonds, of, well, we want to put more burden on the fire benefit charge. This does that. It does that to a significant percentage in 1 year. Do we want to do that? I just noticed that was quite a hefty percentage, and it gave me pause when I saw that much, as opposed to if you look at the property taxes, it's an 8.3% increase year to year. So, we talk about, and we throw around a lot of percentages. Oh, it's a 1% increase year to year. It's a 2% increase when talking about the AV or the millage rate, but I like to look at these percentages that you see in the budget at page 15 of the chief's budget, because it just tells you the raw numbers 2025 to 2026 on property taxes or on benefit charge. And you see that percentage because that's the actual percentage that we're talking about imposing. And, we just should be cognizant of that. Obviously, we have good intentions of what we want to do with that. We've talked about the roadmap, how to fund that. It's not cheap. Doing that comes with dollar signs. And so we have to be willing to pay for what we want. And if we want to provide that additional resource, we got to pay for it. But this is also the part of the year where the dreams of that great plan now have the rubber meets the road and you have to pay for it. You start looking at the dollars and going, ooh, that's a pretty significant percentage increase. So as we start our journey on 2026 budget, I just wanted to highlight a few of those issues. Before we get too far down the road here in our budget process, but particularly I wanted to highlight the GMT issue. So thanks for letting me drone on. Commissioner Lawrence.
Yes. So why don't we just take out the GMT money out of the budgets, just pretend that, if they do come, it's like, Christmas. What's wrong with doing that? So that's something to think about. And also, if anybody deserves it, the GMT money from the federal government, people in Washington state do, because we give more money to the federal government than we get back. So we need to look into that. Thank you.
Other questions, comments, concerns about 2026 budget? Sorry. Chief, did you have
I was just so we are just, as far as GMT goes, we are currently doing our cost report for fiscal year 25 right now. We'll submit it I think we have to have it submitted to the state by the end of November. So we're still actively doing the work with the state as part of the GM program as it is today. So right now, again, there's a lot of unknowns, but there's been no stop, wait. Everything right now is working and we're doing what we've done in years past. I will say that part of the challenge, we used to get our GMT money in April, right around tax day. The state is doing 100% audits on all our cost reports. That has delayed our reimbursement. And so I think, and Chris, I think we were in October of last year when we got our revenue from the state and our reimbursement check from GMT. And it was directly related to Moss staffer who the state has hired to do 100% audits on all the cost reports. And so that's part of.
Does the state have that money in the bank somewhere?
So the way the state does our GMT, which is unique from the rest of the states in the US, is Healthcare Authority does a carve out. So they get their money from when the state gets their Medicaid money from the feds, they take the GMT piece, they carve out a piece of those dollars and set it aside for then us to finish our cost report, for then us to get reimbursed. So I think Chris is correct.
What years do they have that carved out of already?
So I believe because fiscal year 24 was done last November. And so they've had that. And like Chris said, because we don't take intermittent payments and we do it all settlement at the end, they've had those dollars in fiscal year 24, which ended in June of this year. No, June of last year, or June of this year. Sorry. I'm wrong. June of last year. I got to get my fiscal years right with the feds. And so I don't know what the future of GMT is. I do know that the state plan would have to be amended And there's a lot of moving pieces. And I think the uncertainty, I don't think anybody really knows what's happening with what's going on in Washington DC. We're watching it. But right now, everything that we're doing just like we have in years past. So there hasn't been any changes yet, which means nobody knows. That doesn't necessarily
The only
make
thing we know for
anybody
sure is
feel.
24 is the only thing 2024 is the only thing we are sure there's the money. After that, toss up.
Yeah, and again, I mean, again, I think if you were to ask me if this were to happen, I would say they'd have to amend the state plan, which would then amend the cost report, which would then redo work, or the feds would say, we're not doing it anymore. But I think we're in uncharted waters, and I don't know if the normal process is what we need to worry about. It's the unknown process. But I want to let you know that's where things are at, and we're currently filling out the 25 cost report that ended in June of this year, and we'll submit it like we have submitted it by the end of November. So that stuff is still working as it normally has.
Other questions, comments, 2026 budget? Sorry, Commissioner Teoflat.
For the increase in the benefit charge, the 65%, is that just due to mainly like admins coming in?
So Chris
I don't-
probably knows the numbers better than I, but if I remember right, Edmund's portion, if they were in the RFA in last year or this year, would have been about 1.4 million additional funds. So some of it is Edmund's portion of the benefit charge, and then there's an increased portion on top of that. Is that what you were asking?
So you can see the actual details on page 15 of the budget book, and it actually calls out the annexation, the additional benefit charge associated with annexation is called out separately. So the 65% is exclusive of the annexation dollars.
And then my second question is regarding the GEMT payments. So we have an option of doing it monthly.
Correct.
That would give us a chance to just earn interest on that money, and we could just keep it separately. And if we have to send it back to them, we can, but we've earned interest. So that's something to consider.
So how that's done is it was done based on the transport, and it was just a separate code. And there were very specific reasons at the time that we didn't do it that way. And I would recommend, at least in the short term, we continue our path and then consider that down the road.
Other questions, comments, Commissioner
I
Chan?
just want to comment about, I think the benefit charge, even though the percentage seems high, but the dollar amount wise is not huge. So I don't think we should too concerned about it. And also that we have been actually, even the group, they know that that's kind of shifting our burden from, instead of from the general tax, the benefit charge is much more towards the business itself. So I think a lot of people not too worried about it. The second that you mentioned about the GEMT is coming from the health budget, right? The
The dollars are Medicaid dollars,
Medicaid
but what happens is the healthcare authority in the state,
right.
which manages those dollars. What I'm saying is they do a carve out. So when they get their dollars from the feds for Medicaid, they carve out a portion of it for GEMT. And so and it's sitting there until we get our cost reports done, or if people get it, per transport, per time use. And then it gets allocated, but they carve it out, and that's really to benefit the agencies.
So when you carve it out, but if in the federal government, that the reason we shut down is because the health situation, is that part of it? Are they looking even at such a small amount? I don't think.
Well,
overlooking it.
so I guess I'll say this. In the grand scheme of the entitlement programs and Medicare and the state plan amendments, I'll look at our state plan amendment that, for our agency, it's between $8 and $11 million a year reimbursement. The state plan amendment that was done after we established the GMT state plan
Right?
was for $1 billion with a B.
B.
Right? So our program is relatively small in comparison to the other programs that the state has with regards to Medicaid and the equivalent reimbursement program, you know, that's whatever that is. I can't remember what that was. So
Right.
we're a very small piece. But again, I don't know. I don't know if the entitlement programs get cut, at what level they get cut, and what they cut. Or they just say, here's the money now you get, everybody got it. I'm just gonna use a number, 20% reduction. States figure out how you're gonna deal with it. I don't
Yeah.
know where that lands. And I'm not exactly sure if the state, I mean, the state hasn't talked to us. I've talked to the state, but they're just as up in the air and don't know. Right. So like I said, right now, everything's moving status quo. We're moving as if what the current plan is how we're going to continue to move forward. The challenge is going to come. We do our thing based on the state plan amendment and the state gives us less money, or the feds give the state less money. What does that mean? Because the partnership we have isn't with the state. Our partnership and the agreement we have is with the feds, right? And again, like Commissioner Kenny said, we're in uncharted times, and just because we have the agreement and we're following the state plan, there is some question out there of what is actually going to happen with it. And I think we don't know. The one thing I will say is with GMT, we knew the feds were wanting to open up the state plan and adjust, which we already predicted could be, you know, a 40 to 50% reduction depending on how you do it. And
So my
last year,
Yeah.
Chris set up what we call the Operational Stabilization Fund of 4.5 million for the anticipation, not of what we're talking about today, but for what was happening prior to what's going on right now in Washington, D.C., where they wanted to change how we did our cost reporting that would have reduced the reimbursement amount. So the board was proactive in this with CFO Bothwell's proposal last year to create what we call the stabilization fund in anticipation of some of GEMT going away as a result of what was going on before. So we've halfway addressed the issue at some sense
Right.
with establishing that account. Now the question is, what's the rest of the story? What's the rest of of where we go as an organization with regards to that? But I'm proud of the fact that, you know, CFO Bothwell brought something forward, the board supported it, and we've created at least a fund. So and again, it goes along with what Commissioner Kenny was saying, you know, we have a stabilization fund that was specifically designed for GMT,
Right.
$4.5 million. Again,
I'm
that's a
glad-
shorter-term fix, not
Yeah,
long-term
I'm
fix.
glad we're conservative. We
Mhm.
have a lot of stable fund, we have a reserve and everything else. But the question to CFO Bothwell is that, can we switch to the intermediate funding rather than wait until the end of the year? Of course, cash flow is important. We'd rather grab the money first before we do that. Can we switch that? The question to you, CFO.
I apologize. I can't, I couldn't tell if that was for Chief. I don't know the answer to that question, but I can definitely look into it.
Yeah, I think we can switch it. It's much better to get the money and then settle rather than waiting the end of the year to settle the money. All right.
Yeah, let me look into that. I'll reach out to the state and we'll figure that out. And I will respond back to the board at the next budget update.
Right. So, but then I think a lot of hiring people and that type of thing is flexible, so to speak, a little bit, you know. So we can have that. We might have to dig into some of the reserve, but we don't know, right? But yeah. But in general, still feel good. We have equipment reserve, everything reserved. All right. We have all the money we need to pay for whatever our needs are. Maybe we could start a cut with a commissioner, cutting a commissioner budget or something. All right.
Any other questions, comments on 2025 budget? We'll be back talking about it next week.
And Commissioner Kenny, if any of the commissioners want to reach out to staff and talk about budget or ask or answer questions in between meetings, please reach out to, you can reach out to any of the executive staff along with CFO Bothwell. And we'd love to have the conversations and make sure that we answer your questions. So when we get to the final deliberation and everybody's comfortable with what we have established for the budget. And so staff will be available in between meetings, and so please feel free to reach out to any of the executive staff. They're all well versed in the budget.
Great. Thank you, Chief. All right. Well, that moves us forward then in the agenda to item 10D, which is the sick leave policy we talked about previously. Chief Eastman.
So we actually brought this back to the HR and Finance Subcommittee and talked about it. And I think after a brief discussion, they felt very comfortable bringing it back to the full board for final discussion and hopefully action on the change in the policy. You heard from Director Cullen a couple times on the topic. I'm gonna give you my version of it. I do support it, and I know we had a lot of conversation at the last meeting that we talked about it. Currently, your administrative staff at time of separation gets 25% of their 25% of their sick leave cashed out at their current rate of pay. Your bargaining units, your represented employees, get that 25%. The difference is in the 1828 local, they get it at senior firefighter at 20 years, it goes to 35% versus 20% or 25%. Your deputy chief group, it's cashed out at the rate of pay. If they're less than 20 years, it's at 25%. If they're over 20 years, it's at 35%. What this policy change would do is it would have all the employees, and for an employee that reaches a 25-year milestone in the organization, would get an extra 25% of their sick leave bought out, or an extra 10%. So they go from 25 to 30 at 20 years of service. And when you look at what that is, it's 140 hours. That's less than a month's pay. And so from an economic perspective, that may help. And I do support it. It treats the administrative staff like we treat our labor group. It's a very small change for somebody who wants to and dedicated 20 years of service into this organization. And it puts us in line with the majority of the employee group as we go. And so I'd prefer not to go down a path where the conversation leads to potentially the administrative staff losing what they already have, which is 25% at their rate of pay. And so that's what I would like to add is it's a 20-year employee gets an extra 10% of their sick leave bought out at 20 years. It goes from 25 to 35, which equates to 140 hours, which is just under a month's pay or a month of their salary.
Commissioner Chan and Commissioner Lawrence.
If I remember correctly, you only have identified like 6 people will be there on 25 years?
I would venture to say right now,
Yeah.
you're looking at probably the uniform staff that are
No,
non-representatives.
the civil,
Yeah,
yeah, the regular people, administration people.
yep.
It's a small number of people, right? You don't know.
I would say outside of the folks, my assistant chiefs, I don't think I have anybody. I think the closest is 10 years right now. I don't have
Okay, yeah,
anybody
you
at the
don't have any-
20-year mark administratively,
Okay,
except for the assistant chiefs.
right. Okay.
Okay, Commissioner Lawrence.
So could you give me the words so I can make a motion for this?
I would say that we would like the board to approve the sick leave buyout policy change that was, I don't know if we put it in the packet. Did we put it in the packet, Melissa? We didn't.
Okay.
the policy change that was presented or adjust the sick leave buyout policy for administrative, non-represented staff to add a 35% buyout at 20 years of service.
Can you do something with that, Jim? Beyond my capacity, sorry. It'll have to wait for a couple of weeks, I think.
Questions? I'm sorry, Chief, anything else?
Nope.
Questions, comments? Anything else? Yes, Board Liaison Kircher.
How does it work with because the sick leave is for the senior firefighter wage? So like a battalion chief makes more than a senior firefighter. And how does that language from the union contract match up with the language of what you're proposing? So then what would?
Mike.
It doesn't. So the main body of the union's contract in the contract says that their sick leave buyout is the same 25% until you get to 20 years, then it goes to 35%. But the contract stipulates it's the cash out is at the senior firefighter pay. The deputy chiefs, which is Local 1828S, their agreement has the same 25% and then goes to 35% at 20 years, but their buyouts at their rate of pay that was negotiated with the DC's contract. And then the administrative policy that everybody who's non-represented is currently at 25% at the rate of pay, but that's it. There's no bump at 20 years of tenure in the organization.
So there's different contracts for different levels of seniority in the union, or for levels of command or whatever you describe. Okay, thank you.
Anything else? Any other discussion? Okay. We will come back to this at a future meeting. We'll move on in the agenda then to new business, item 11A, which is a resolution in support of Edmonds Proposition Number 1. Chief Eastman.
So me again.
Yes.
We talked about this in intergovernmental. And I don't know if Commissioner Wittes wants to start the conversation or if he wants me to just continue.
Oh, just continue. That's fine.
So as the board may or may not know, that we can, under resolution, support another governmental entity's proposition that's on the ballot. We have the right to do that. In your packet, you have a resolution by the Edmonds Council that talks about what happens if their levy doesn't pass in November and what the reductions would be. You also have a PowerPoint that they've been presenting that talk about what they're going to do with the dollars. And they look at they identify 5 different pots is how the mayor describes it. And they talk about public safety, sidewalks, and deferred maintenance and those. And and it looks at where the dollars and cents, how much would go into each one of those pots for the challenges that the city faces. And so both my staff and the Intergovernmental Committee thought it was appropriate for the board to consider a resolution supporting Edmonds Prop 1. And from my perspective, our cities that reside in the RFA, we want them to be strong. And if they make significant cuts to their public safety, which is law, that does have an impact on our response. It has an impact on the safety of our firefighters responding to certain events. And their maintenance of infrastructure and maintaining roads. And I mean, those all have an impact on the RFA. And if the city doesn't have the funds to adequately do those work or outfit their police department, they do have an impact on our response and what we do. And so there's a resolution in the packet that offers the board the opportunity to pass a resolution in support of their proposition that they have on the ballot for November. I did have a conversation with the mayor last week. Was it last week? About just in general what their plan is, because I didn't think it was fair to bring a resolution forward to the board without giving you an idea of what happens if their proposition doesn't pass and the impacts it will have to the city. And I think the resolution that's in your packet, quite frankly, is pretty straightforward about where the city's making cuts and how drastic those cuts would be. The PowerPoint you have that talks about where they're going to put dollars and cents is a little bit, it shows where the big dollars are going to go. It doesn't get into the fine detail, but specific to law enforcement, it tells you what that means and what those dollars and cents do in the packet. So staff is supportive of supporting the city of Edmonds and their Prop 1. And with that, I'll see if Commissioner Wittes wants to add anything to or perspective from the chair of the intergovernmental.
I think it's something we should support. I think we're remiss by not supporting Briars. We want strong partners and we want them to be the same way with us when we go to the levy.
Great. General questions, comments, thoughts on the issue from the board? So I think, oh, sorry, go ahead, Commissioner Teoflo.
Yeah, I'm in support of approving the support of the resolution.
Any other? If not, then I think we're probably ready for a motion. And we actually have the resolution at page, sorry, let's go to it. It's actually in our packet at, sorry, page 97 of the packet, which is resolution 1007-2025-15. So I'll move that we adopt resolution 1007-2025-15, which is expression of support for City of Edmonds Proposition number 1.
I'll second that.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to adopt that resolution. Is there discussion on the motion? Any discussion on the
I
motion?
just want to echo the, our chair, commission, intercommittee chair, Commissioner Wittes. I think that's critical for us to support the city.
Very good. Any other discussion on the motion? I did want to offer pursuant to RCW 42.17A.555, we have to allow members of the public to express an opposing view if they wish. And so I want to provide that opportunity now. If there is any request to express opposition to this motion to support Proposition 1. And to that extent, I'll ask in the room, is there any request to opposing views on Proposition 1? Not seeing any request here, let me turn it over to Ms. Blankenship. Is there anybody on our Zoom platform that wants to express opposition to Proposition 1?
There is not.
Very good, thank you. I believe I've satisfied our requirements under RCW 42.17A.555. So we are then ready to, any other discussion amongst the board on the motion? If not, we're ready to move to a vote. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes unanimously.
Thank you. Chair Kenny, if I'm going to reach out to the mayor and let him know. I'm hoping that we can get a copy of the signed resolution and get it to the city of Edmonds as fast as we can get that done. And I didn't know if either Commissioner Wittes or yourself want to reach out before I talk to the mayor and reach out to the council president or anything prior to this. We can talk afterwards. I just don't want to get ahead. If somebody from the board wants to make a phone call first, I'll follow up with the mayor later.
We could talk offline.
Thanks.
Yeah, sounds good. All right, that moves us forward in the agenda then to item 11B, which is creation of a fire chief succession committee, and that's me.
No, we needed right away. He left. He's gone now.
I guess so. Well, we're moving right along then. So Chief Eastman has indicated to me and other members of the board that he wishes to retire in 2026. And I believe other members of the board would like to have a succession plan that involves an internal promotion of Chief Maxwell to Fire Chief. But in 2026 and have a smooth transition from Chief Eastman to Chief Maxwell. But it would require, there are a bunch of details to make that happen. And so I believe the most efficient way to do that is to form a committee. We no longer call them standing and ad hoc committees. I checked our policy before tonight, but this would be a limited duration committee for the purpose of working on a contract with Chief Maxwell, handling the transition details. I imagine the committee would exist into 2026, but not too far into 2026. So not a standing or permanent committee, but to address these issues and to bring forward options and a contract or for the board's decision. Only the board can make decisions related to this, including a final decision to promote Chief Maxwell to chief. But there are lots of details that need to be worked out behind the scenes. And a committee is in a good position to do that and then bring forward items to the board in this regard. So I think that appointment of a committee, creation of a committee, and then our board appoints to the committee would be appropriate. So I prepared the agenda bill for that purpose that you see at page 134 of the agenda packet. Before we do anything else, though, I wanted to see if there was comment or question from the board members. If not, I'll go ahead and move that the board create a board fire chief succession committee and appoint Commissioners Chan, Kenny, and Wittes to it. Is there a second?
I'll second
by
that.
Commissioner Lawrence got to it first.
Oh,
It's been moved and seconded to create that committee and make those appointments. Is there discussion on the motion? Any discussion on the motion? If not, we'll move to a vote. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes unanimously. Thank you. So more to come on that and in future meetings as we get to work on that. Thank you. All right, that moves us forward then to committee updates, starting item number 12, starting with Capital Facilities. Planning
Yes,
Committee.
well,
Commissioner
last
Lawrence.
week, we kind of talked about what we talked about tonight, which was the bond and how to sell it to the taxpayers. That's it.
Very good. Finance and Human Resources, Commissioner Chan.
We'll talk to ourselves, we'll come up with agenda for the third week of, on Thursday.
Okay. Thank you. Next up, Intergovernmental, Commissioner Wittes.
Thank you, Chair. Just wanted to bring up that we did meet and you've seen it with Edmund's resolution. Also, we talked about discussing things with our lobbyists about changing a couple of laws for the commissioners, and I'd like to bring that up at our workshop next meeting.
So like a legislative update?
Just the stuff we're looking at with board members for all commissioners. Should we look at doing medical coverage? That's stipulated in law that we're the only special purpose district that can't. And is it something that we want to look at as far as do we want to create more units of service with bigger fire agencies?
Okay. And you want to do that at the next meeting, the workshop?
Yes.
Ms. Blankenship, could you put that on our draft agenda? We can talk about it. That sounds good. Commissioner Wittes, anything else?
No, that's it. Thank you.
Sounds good. Next up then is Snow 911 Committee, Commissioner Fernhoff.
Yes, good evening. They did convene both in a in-person and hybrid. meeting last month. We had to split our duty in our division of labor here. So Chief was kind enough to attend in person the Snow 911 board meeting while I tried to push in a fire truck at Station 76. So I'm going to turn it over to my partner in crime to give us a brief out on the budget vote and how it went.
Yeah, so the majority of the meeting was on the 2026 budget for Snow 911. And it's no secret that the county and everybody else are having financial challenges in the whole county. Everybody's having some challenges. And the original budget showed about a 4% increase. The final budget showed about a 2.9% increase. They were adding new programs, and Mayor Kay from Breyer was on. I listened to other mayors talk about the financial challenges that everybody's facing, and the reality is at the end, the budget actually was approved, but I was a no vote along with Chief DeMarco and Mayor Kay from Breyer. And I've not been at a lot of the meetings with 911, but I'm not so sure they've had many no votes on their budget. It was a long conversation, and talked about the challenges that everybody's facing in the county when it comes to dollars and cents and the tax. I mean, the fiscal challenges we all face, and the cities are facing it. At least the cities that are in RRFA are having real challenges. And it was really hard for me to have 911 add new programs and increase when the cities around me who still pay dispatch from fire are looking at significant cuts just to continue to operate as a city. And so it passed. There was only 3 no votes, and I want to say there was 12 or 15 yes votes. But I think there was a clear message, and I don't necessarily think the economic challenges we face are going away anytime soon. So it wasn't a bad meeting. It was a very honest, open dialogue, and I just want to let Commissioner Farnoff know, but we were a no vote as a result of the challenges that our partner cities have been facing. And I've had dialogue with them over the previous meeting and this meeting. So wanted to let the board know that will happen, but 911 does have an approved budget and they're moving forward for 2026.
What's the percentage increase on that budget? What was the?
So the overall budget increase, I think, landed at 2.9%. And then it's kind of, I'd have to go back and look because you've got Edmonds coming in. So our portion goes up with Edmonds in, and then AV changes and call load changes. So it gets tweaked a little bit. And then if you remember, we overpaid and got a credit, and I'm not exactly sure how that all worked out. I know CFO Bothwell knows more. So we were overcharged last year, and I think it's leveling out. And I think the majority of our increase was Edmonds, the fire portion of Edmonds.
Yeah, I think the stunning part is when you add everything up, at least for the across the board, it was close to 4%. And now Snow 911 has just built a brand new building, has brand new hardware, et cetera, et cetera. So it's kind of the assumption that they're going to be paying for that new palace in some capacity. The other limiting factors that were brought up in previous meeting was staffing. They seem to be rolling through staffing on kind of a regular basis, which just begs the question, if we don't have a lot of folks that are tenured and they're restarting and hiring at a base rate, then they should have at least some room in their budget to be flexible. So we'll see what happens.
Sounds good. Very good. Thank you. That takes us then to item number 13, which is commissioner comments. Any commissioner comments? Commissioner Chan.
Yeah, so I got this email from, I think most of you got is called PTSD 911. So I wasn't really paying too much attention. Well, I kind of like, oh, okay. But then I think it just, everything comes in line. I think when we do the staffing, we used to be 4.5. Commissioner with us remember that, and now it become 5.6, adding one more person. And then in the Snow Isle meeting, we have this person come up with the PDST. I think she was an MSO or,
Oh,
yeah, Snow Isle meeting.
Yeah, Camino Island.
Camino
Fire and
Island Fire Rescue.
Captain, I think.
Captaining. And really, when you see somebody in front of you telling about that whole thing, and I just, it's coming. So anyway, and there's a Whatcom County. Actually, I didn't realize it was in Whatcom County. I signed up and I said, oh my God, got to drive up to Bellingham to do it. It was I think it's a pretty fair movie to representing real people. One thing that caught my, they have discussions, everything else. And basically in regular people like me, probably only have 5 or 6 incident, car accident, whatever it is, look at the trauma and all that. And I do not like blood, so I trying to avoid it, but I still remember my first drive along Station 11. I went to Madonna and someone fell off, got drunk, fell off, and they put them in Madonna. And I just trying to do something. They all busy, so I went to paper towel and wipe up the blood. It wasn't a happy experience. So I'm not saying why there, but I think in the movie talk about we should have some kind of program to look at that to equivalent to our physical fitness, right? We buy all the gym, get physical, but now I think, I'm not saying pro, whatever it is, I think we should start taking a look at that. Attention, be proactive, and maybe some kind of system going up. I don't know. I don't want to heal budget. I'm just expressing that I feel we must pay some attention how that works.
Thank you, Commissioner Chan. Any other commissioner comments? Commissioner Wittes.
Thank you. Just update from the Fire Commissioners Association. Roger Ferris did put in his resignation, or I mean, his retirement, I should say, letter. Looks like it'll be like the 1st of May. And also Anne, who runs the healthcare side of it, she did resign. So they got some changes going on down there, and we'll just, so you're aware of it in October. Thanks.
Great, thank you. Any other commissioner comments? If not, we are at the 10 o'clock witching hour and the end of our meeting, and we have no other business. So we do have our meeting next Tuesday, 7 o'clock for our work session. And without any other business and without objection, we are adjourned until next Tuesday. Thank you. Have a good night.
Nice addition with the commission.